the opening frame and dominates the match by storming 5 frames in front. Long has a best effort of 60 in the 6th to pull a frame back. The Zhao wraps it up with a run of 72 to win 6-1. He will meet another compatriot, Zhang Anda, for a place in the quarter-finals. Switching to football, and the draw for the World Cup is set for Friday in Washington, D.C. Spain cannot meet Argentina, and France will not go up against England before the final, provided they win their groups. This format aims to maintain competitive balance. In the expanded 48-team tournament, the top 4 seeded teams will not be able to meet until the semi-finals for the first time if those sides win their respective groups. The updated match schedule, including stadiums and kick-off times, will be released on Saturday, one day after the draw. Hosts Canada, Mexico and the US are in pot 1, which includes Euros winners Spain, defending world champions Argentina, as well as France, England, Brazil, Portugal, the Netherlands, Belgium and Germany. Over in the Spanish La Liga, Barcelona are preparing to welcome Atletico Madrid to the Camp Nou later on Tuesday for a match that could prove to be pivotal at the top of the table. Barcelona enter the game top after a 3-1 win over Alaves on Saturday, following a poor showing at Chelsea in the Champions League last week. Pedri made his return from injury off the bench, replacing Rafinha, who started his first game in 2 months since recovering from a hamstring injury. Pedri should be back in the starting lineup on Tuesday, but it's not yet clear whether he'll partner Frankie de Jong, who was ruled out late on against Alaves. Coach Hansi Flick admits they will need to improve against an Atletico side that now sits just 3 points behind them in 4th.
We have to play on our best level against this team. And how I said before, in the beginning, that I think this is one of the best team in Europe, even with a lot of quality. I think also they increased the quality with the transfer market in the summer. So it's really a fantastic team. So I like to see them playing in the offense. They're really good. So it will be tough also, but also we have also the quality, and we have to show it tomorrow.
Germany's DFB Pokal will see Dortmund host Leverkusen in a highly fancied last 16 contest. Dortmund edged Leverkusen 2-1 away in the Bundesliga on Saturday and are hoping for a similar result at home, while the visitors would like nothing more than to turn the tables.
It was a close game, a tight game in Leverkusen, but I still think we deserve to win. And tomorrow will be another close game, and it will depend on the little things. The little things will also decide this final tomorrow, which is what it ultimately is.
We have already played against Dortmund, so of course we know the quality of our opponents. But we are ready for another top match, and I think we actually had a lot of good phases in our game against Dortmund. Hopefully we've learned a bit and we'll play a bit better this time, but we are ready for another top match against Dortmund.
Okay, you're watching Sports Scene on CGTN. Still to come. China fall to the ROK in FIBA World Cup qualifying for the second time in 4 days, with this defeat coming on the road.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you. All around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
We return with basketball, and China fell to the Republic of Korea for the second time in 4 days in Asian qualifying for the 2027 FIBA World Cup. Coach Guo Shitiang's men stay third in Group B after losing 90-76 in Wonju. The ROK host the return fixture after frustrating China in Beijing on Friday. Lee Jung-hyun's three puts the home side ahead by 6 in the first quarter. Lee drills another triple and the ROK extend their edge to 21 in the second. Yeon Jun-hyung steps back for a buzzer-beating three of his own. The hosts lead 52-29 at halftime. China chip away after the break. Chung Shai-pong sinks three of his team-high 19 points to close the gap to 23. Lee keeps the ROK on the front foot after connecting for three more of his game-high 24. Well, China tried to make a late run and Ju Junlong sets up Chung for another triple, but Lee Hyun-jung adds 20 points and the hosts win this one by 14.
我们世界杯窗口期
Losing 2 games in a row in the FIBA window is tight, and it will be especially tough for us to advance to the World Cup. We play very badly on both offense and defense, where the ROK play much better, and that's how we lost this game.
World Athletics President Sebastian Coe says China has boosted the sport and helped its global profile. The Chinese Athletics Association was recently honoured by World Athletics, whose 69-year-old boss believes the achievement was well deserved.
It's a very important player. You are dedicating time and energy, specializing in coaching around sprinting or endurance or the field events, particularly some of the jumps and the throws. And that means that a strong China creates an even stronger platform. There were many, many features that have distinguished the Chinese Federation for many years. They have very, very good administration. They are consistently hosting and being involved with the local organizing committees of our key WAS World Athletics Series events in China just this year. We had the World Indoor Championships in Nanjing, we had the World Relays in Guangzhou, and of course in 2027 the jewel in the crown comes to Beijing, which of course is our World Athletics Championships.
Up next, we take a look back at Sunday's Shanghai Marathon, where Kenya's Bridget Kosgei stormed to victory in the women's elite race, while Mikesa Mengesha led an Ethiopian 1-2-3 finish on the men's side. More than 23,000 runners line up for the 42,195 kilometre marathon through the streets of the host city, with the race taking another step toward joining the ranks of the World Marathon Majors. Competing in her third marathon of the season, the former world record holder Kosgei claims her first win since Abu Dhabi in 2023. The 31-year-old breaks the tape first in a new course record of 2 hours, 16 minutes, 36 seconds. She is followed by compatriot and 2017 cross-country world champion Irene Keptai, who finishes as runner-up in 2 hours, 18 minutes, 51 seconds. Ethiopia's Tirue Mesfin comes third, with Jiang Deshen sealing her fourth straight national women's title in 2 hours, 25 minutes, 13 seconds, which is the fastest time ever clocked by a Chinese woman at this event. And Ethiopia's podium sweep in the men's elite race is led by Mengesha in 2 hours, 6 minutes, 25 seconds. Last year's Berlin Marathon winner is joined on the podium in Shanghai by countrywoman Dawit Volder and Larissa Galata. Also standing out at this year's Shanghai Marathon was Yao Miao, a 3-time champion at the world's premier trail running event, the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc. She posted a time of 2 hours, 30 minutes, 13 seconds to finish third in the Chinese women's category for the second consecutive year, setting a new personal best.
Known as the trail running race, Yao has won 3 UTMB titles across different race categories, having first claimed victory in the CCC category in 2018 before securing back-to-back wins in the OCC 50km category in 2024 and 2025. Meanwhile, beyond her trail success, the 29-year-old has also claimed multiple domestic marathon titles. Yao acknowledges the distinct demands of each discipline, but is determined to push her limits and achieve breakthroughs in both.
For me, marathon training is primarily about building speed, since the greatest challenge during the race is testing my limits in that area. Trail running requires a more complete skill set with a greater emphasis on technique. My trail experience helps me handle hilly marathon courses more easily. Ultimately, I'm aiming to break through in both disciplines.
Born in southwest China's Guizhou province, Yao finished third in the Chinese women's category last year. Facing a strong field of elite domestic and international runners this year, she started aggressively and maintained her pace throughout, ultimately crossing the line in 2 hours, 30 minutes, 13 seconds to retain her podium position at the Shanghai Marathon.
I think I ran quite well and pretty much stuck to my plan. My target was under 2 hours and 30 minutes, and the result was just about right. For the new season, I'll still be aiming to run under 2 hours and 30 minutes in the marathon. Next year, my goal is to make a breakthrough. I'm setting my sights on a time around 2 hours 27 minutes, or even pushing for 2 hours 25 minutes.
Now, ahead of the Rugby World Cup draw, South Africans have been paying tribute to one of the country's greatest players, Siya Kolisi. The Springboks captain recently achieved a rare feat of notching 100 tests for South Africa. CGTN Sias du Plessis reports.
Siya Kolisi is South Africa's most successful and influential captain to date. By winning back-to-back World Cup titles in his tenure as skipper, the 34-year-old has transcended the sport of rugby. And after becoming only the 9th Springbok to play 100 tests, the man from Zweden has etched his name into the history books yet again.
It's a huge honor just to wear the green and gold jersey. That's what I've always said for me. Captaincy or anything like that, it's just to put on the green and gold jersey. It's less than 1,000 Springboks if you think about it. So it's a huge honor. Not many people get to do this, but to wear it 100 times is also like super special.
He controls if I can call it, the climate or the vibe in the team really well. And that's what I admire a lot of things about him, but that's probably the thing that I admire most, that he can create an environment where everybody feels we're all worthy and we're all equal.
And many echo the thoughts of the Springbok coach, who has forged a father-like son relationship with Kolisi since appointing him captain in 2018, with his former coaches and former players describing him as a humble champion of the people of South Africa.
He can't basically walk in the streets of any place in South Africa and he'll get stopped every 2 seconds by somebody asking for a photo and autograph, and how he managed that whole process is just incredible. Amazing human being, amazing leader. I think an example to so many people, and then also inspiring hope for so many people.
It's almost every time the country is going through any moment of difficulty, the Springboks are able again to bring about just some joy and smiles to the faces of South Africans. And again, Siya is at the heart of that. He speaks openly about that, and I think his impact is way beyond more than the rugby field.
His name, Siyamthanda, means we love him in isiZulu and isiXhosa. And it's apt for the man who's admired and cherished as a national hero. His remarkable feat of playing in 100 tests is thoroughly deserved for the young boy who found rugby in a village and through the sport changed his destiny, ascending to dizzying heights in the biggest stadiums in the world to be rightfully crowned King Kolisi, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest Springbok captains of all time. Sias du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
Don't go anywhere, because news on the latest edition of the Winter Olympics schedule is next on Sports Scene. Ski mountaineering will make its debut at the Milano Cortina Games, with the athletes competing in the sprint and relay events.
CGTN.
You're watching CGTN with the latest market-moving headlines from around the world.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
We're back with a new event that will make its debut at the Milano Cortina Winter Games, where ski mountaineering is set to feature for the first time. 4 events are typically contested during a ski mountaineering World Cup season. They are the sprint, individual, vertical and mixed relay. The Olympics will just hold the sprint and mixed relay. The sprint is a short, intense race with climbing and downhill sections where athletes can carry their skis on a foot segment even. Races last around 3.5 minutes, progressing through heat, semi-finals and then finals. The mixed relay sees each team comprising of 1 man and 1 woman. Each athlete completes 2 loops of the course, with the race lasting 30 minutes to an hour. 18 athletes per gender will compete in the sprint, while 18 teams will battle for the mixed relay title. The action unfolds in Borneo over 2 days. The sprint finals will be on February 19th, followed by the mixed relay on February 21st. Meanwhile, CMG's colourfully dubbed China Red 4K, 8K ultra-high-definition broadcast vehicle fleet has departed for Italy from the port of Taisang in Jiangsu province ahead of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. 2 broadcast vehicles and 2 supporting vehicles arrived at the port last month and will be shipped to Italy on the large photovoltaic and liquefied natural gas dual-fuel car carrier Yuan Haikou. Measuring almost 200 meters in length, the vessel weighs more than 68,000 tons and features 12 vehicle decks. The ship is set to take the Mediterranean sea lane and reach Italy in about 25 days. The vehicles are expected to roll into the San Siro on January 13th to provide technical support for the opening ceremony and produce 8K international video signals. The voyage marks a new chapter for the China Red broadcast fleet, whose mission for Milano Cortina 2026 symbolizes a new breakthrough for the country's media industry in global sport by underscoring its growing technological prowess and production capabilities.
CMG has dispatched 2 China Red ultra-high-definition broadcast vehicles and the selection of world-class specialized equipment to Italy. We will provide 4K and 8K equipment support and technical services for the broadcasting of events like the opening and closing ceremonies, short track skating and figure skating and the games. For the 2026 Winter Olympics, CMG and the Olympic Broadcasting Services have formed an exclusive partnership to establish an 8K ultra-high-definition broadcasting team and jointly participate in the production of broadcasts.
This year's National Weightlifting Championships are underway in Guizhou, and Hunan's Oh Liu-ting won the overall title in the women's 45 kilograms division with a combined effort of 180 kilograms. The women's 45 kilograms is the first event of these championships, and Wei Li from Guangdong takes gold in the snatch with a result of 79 kilograms. Oh and Fujian's Gao Yimei engage in a close battle in the clean and jerk before Gao comes out on top with 109, just 1 more kilogram than Oh. But the 19-year-old's 180 kilograms is the highest total result, and her mark also surpasses the 49 kilograms World Youth overall record. We finish with China's 12th National Games for persons with disabilities and the 9th National Special Olympic Games. Shanghai's Yang Xiupeng claimed gold in the men's compound bow W1 50 meters category. In the final, Yang beat Shaanxi's Liu Xuerun 138 to 136 to win the title. This marks his second medal at the ongoing games. Zhejiang's Jiang Tianqian comes third. On the women's side, Jiangsu's Wang Huiting needs 5 rounds to beat Sichuan's Xu Xueting 143 to 141. Another Sichuan archer, Zhao Jing, picks up the bronze. And in the men's individual compound bow open 50 meters final, Zhejiang's Bao Yirei overcomes Shaanxi's Jiang Yicheng in the 5th and last round. Zhang leads the first 4 rounds, but a critical 7-point shot in the final round is his first below 9 points, and that allows Bao to overtake the lead and win 145 to 144. Zhang takes his second silver at this edition, while Liao Ning's Ai Xinliang comes away with the bronze. Okay, that wraps up Sports Scene for today. I'm going to say goodbye with some more highlights from the table tennis mixed team World Cup in Chengdu. Be sure to check us out using the handle CGTN Sports Scene across X, Facebook and YouTube, and staying right there because the world today continues next. I'll see you soon.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on CGTN.
Holding guns. Word protester. Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to rise up. Excuse me.
Hello and welcome from Beijing. This is The World Today. I'm Wang Mengmang. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Cong, says China firmly opposes Japan's latest letter to the United Nations, accusing Tokyo of evading key issues and attempting to shift blame. Here are the details.
China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Cong, has delivered another letter to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, rejecting Japan's arguments over Taiwan as unreasonable and reiterating China's position on the Taiwan question. Fu said the direct cause of the current differences between China and Japan is Prime Minister Sana Takaichi's provocative remarks that implied Japan would militarily intervene in the Taiwan question. Fu's letter comes after his Japanese counterpart Kazuzuki Yamazaki sent a letter to the UN chief, saying Japan's position on issues concerning Taiwan is consistent. The Chinese envoy urged Japan to provide an explanation of its consistent position, citing multiple legally binding documents. Fu said Takaichi's remarks violate the commitments Japan has made. Fu reiterated that Taiwan is Chinese territory, and Takaichi's linkage of Japan's, quote, survival-threatening situation with the Taiwan contingency goes beyond its passive defense strategy. Regarding Yamazaki's insinuation at defense development of other countries, Fu said the international community must remain vigilant against Japan's ambitions to expand its military capabilities and revive militarism. He also said Takaichi's words and deeds have severely undermined mutual trust and damaged the political foundation of China-Japan ties. He urged Japan to demonstrate its sincerity with clear reaffirmation of the One China principle, immediate retraction of the erroneous remarks, and practical steps to honor its commitments to China.
Kyodo News reports Japan has held informal talks with the Philippines on exporting its Type 03 medium-range surface-to-air missile system as the Takaichi government moves to relax Japan's defense export restrictions. Citing multiple sources, Kyodo says the administration plans to abolish current rules that limit defense exports to 5 non-combat categories, possibly as early as the first half of next year. Once a formal decision is made, concrete talks on the missile export could move forward quickly. Kyodo notes the move signals Tokyo's push to expand arms exports, but the lack of full parliamentary debate has already raised concerns. China's Coast Guard says it has expelled a Japanese fishing vessel that illegally entered waters of the Diaoyu Dao on Tuesday. Authorities say Chinese ships issued warnings and took necessary control measures before driving the vessel away. Beijing has reaffirmed the Diaoyu Dao as its inherent territory and urged Japan to stop all provocative actions. Patrols will continue in the area to safeguard China's sovereignty and maritime rights. French President Emmanuel Macron arrives in China this week, beginning a 3-day state visit from December 3rd to 5th at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. And this marks his 4th trip to China. Beijing says the visit reciprocates President Xi's state visit to France last year and comes as the two countries celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations. To explore the goals and expectations of this high-level engagement, CGTN has spoken with 2 former French prime ministers and a former senior trade official.
This visit is something of a tradition. Every year, the French president wanted to go to China, and the Chinese president also comes regularly to France. They have much to discuss, especially as we look ahead to 2026, when France will chair the G7. That will certainly be one of the key topics. Naturally, the international situation will be central to their talks, particularly the future of multilateralism, which faces challenges today. Both France and China are committed to a multilateral approach, one that promotes peace and balanced global governance. There are also many bilateral issues to address, such as economic and cultural issues. This annual high-level dialogue is essential to advancing our shared projects and bringing our two countries closer together.
If we want to solve the world's main problems, we must have a multilateral approach. None of today's major issues can be solved by a single country. This desire to work together is the fundamental point of convergence between China and France.
We're in a moment of great global upheaval. With the balance of power shifting, China will naturally be a major power in the international system. So a new balance must be found. which requires statesmen with a long-term vision. I believe your president has such a vision.
Germany and Poland have taken a significant step toward healing their difficult wartime past. Berlin is formally returning cultural treasures looted by the Nazis and has agreed to build a joint memorial in the German capital to Polish victims. The centerpiece of this handover is a 14th century statue fragment of St. James the Great, alongside 73 medieval manuscripts. They were taken from Warsaw in 1941 during the German occupation and originally came from the city of Gdansk and the Warsaw Central Archive. German and Polish leaders said the planned Berlin Memorial will be a place of remembrance, a warning against tyranny, and a lasting symbol of their reconciliation. The returns followed a day of cabinet-level consultations between the two governments. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been in Paris seeking to bolster European support during talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. Their meeting at the Élysée Palace comes as Kiev considers the peace plan proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, a plan that many European countries fear could concede too much to Moscow. Zelensky's visit follows Ukraine's talks with U.S. officials in Florida and precedes a planned meeting between a U.S. representative and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
We've been watching that news conference between Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron, the two men holding that conference after they had had one-on-one talks inside the Élysée Palace a little bit earlier on. Let me bring you some of those lines that have come out of that. Emmanuel Macron saying that there will be discussions in the coming days between the United States and members of the Coalition of the Willings. This is a group of some 30 or so Western nations that back Ukraine about security guarantees, potentially the very next day after a ceasefire is agreed. Could we see that reassurance force, that much discussed possible force of French and British troops inside Ukraine agreed? Will the US sign off on a NATO Article 5 style security guarantee for Ukraine? So further discussions in the coming days confirmed by Emmanuel Macron. Also, we heard from Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, thanking President Trump for the work the US administration is doing, thanking the European allies for their steadfast support for Ukraine, but also lamenting the fact that there are ongoing attacks at the moment in what Russia describes as the special military operation, what Ukraine describes as a war. And we know that Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky agreed that there has to be a just and lasting peace. And Volodymyr Zelensky saying that, in his opinion, Russia started this conflict, so Russia should end it.
Well, peace talks are once again raising hopes for a deal to end the Ukraine conflict. But in Kiev, many residents say they're not optimistic, pointing to continued attacks and daily uncertainty. Evangelos Sipsas reports from Kiev.
People seem to be tired of all of these talks and what is going on here in the country of Ukraine. There are talks that are taking place. The people here, of course, are looking to the news to see what is going on. They're following these developments in the US, but also in France. But they're not optimistic that this will lead to something. They're very cautious of how they're thinking about these talks. They feel that no breakthrough will actually happen. Attacks continue to take place here in Ukraine, especially earlier on Monday. There was an attack in the Dnipro region where 4 people lost their lives and several were injured. So all these images of attacks, sirens going off, people rushing to the shelters, is not really sitting well with regular people, especially here in the capital of Kyiv, who say that, while these talks are taking place, I still have to cover myself and I still have to cover my family because I don't know when the next attack will happen. It has become a pattern for them.
Evangelos Sipsas reporting there. Floods and landslides across South and Southeast Asia have killed more than 1,200 people. Sri Lanka has suffered its heaviest damage since the 2004 tsunami, with entire communities buried by landslides. The death toll has risen to 410, with 336 others remain missing. Troops and helicopters are reaching areas still cut off. And in Indonesia, areas of Sumatra remain underwater after rare back-to-back storms. Warships and hospital ships are delivering aid to villages where roads have collapsed. Southern Thailand is also enduring one of its deadliest flood events in a decade. Its disaster response has prompted public criticism and the suspension of 2 local officials. Malaysia continues large-scale evacuations as swollen rivers inundate northern states. The World Health Organization has deployed rapid response teams and medical supplies. The UN agency warns that climate change is intensifying extreme weather across the region. Robert Purba reports from Indonesia.
We're in North Tapanuli in North Sumatra, Indonesia. We're on our way from Balige to a shelter in Lubuk. We saw a few gas stations that had cars queuing for gas and causing traffic congestion in the area. Even police officers were deployed to maintain order in the queue to avoid even worse traffic congestion, which could disrupt relief trucks and quick response teams from reaching hardest hit areas. Now, gas stations in Silangit, where we are right now, and also in Sipaholon were two of a few areas that were causing car movement to slow down significantly. I'm Robert Purba for CGTN in North Tapanuli, North Sumatra.
And that's all the news we have for now. Coming up next is Global Business with Michael Wang. Stay tuned.
And welcome to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong in Beijing. The headlines we're tracking for you at this hour. In China's push for rural revitalization, a historic village next to the Great Wall is reborn as an international tourist destination, blending heritage with high-tech ambitions. We take a closer look at how China's Hengdian World Studios has become a key engine for a multi-billion-dollar global short drama industry and setting the standard for rapid, scalable production. And France's President Emmanuel Macron is set to begin a state visit to China with talks focused on bilateral relations and the future of multilateralism. All right, let's take a quick look now at the Chinese mainland stock markets, where shares edged lower on this Tuesday. The Shanghai Composite Index edged down around 0.4% today, while the Shenzhen Component Index dropped nearly 0.7%. All right, now let's get a look at how markets performed around the region and how Wall Street closed out overnight. Well, first up, China's rural road network has met its development targets a year ahead of schedule. During the current 5-year plan period, which concludes this year, the country invested approximately 2 trillion yuan, or about $280 billion into this priority initiative. Now, as of the end of last year, the total length of rural roads increased by 6% compared to the end of the previous planning period. This expansion means nearly 95% of major villages are now connected by paved roads, and close to 90% of small towns have access to the national tertiary road network. Well, as part of China's 15th five-year plan, which spans from 2026 to 2030, rural revitalization is not just about improving infrastructure, it's about transforming rural communities into vibrant hubs. Beigo Village, located near the iconic Mutianyu section of the Great Wall, is one example of this transformation. Our Zhu Zhu is there.
We are now here in Beigo Village, Huaizhou, in the suburbs area of Beijing. Well, this place used to be a small mountain village where people mainly relied on growing chestnuts, but now it is called the Great Wall International Cultural Village. How did that happen? Let's go find out the answer. Beigo Village sits right at the foot of the Mutianyu section of the Great Wall. This Brickyard Hotel is the first registered hotel here. You can enjoy the view of the Great Wall right in this hotel room.
This building was once a glazed tile factory. You can see the traditional 5-pitch roof and ridge beasts, symbols of good fortune. The glazed tiles on the ground and throughout the building were all part of the village's own construction efforts. This area was once an old cave dwelling.
Since this hotel was established, it has helped the local homestay business grow rapidly. Many villagers have renovated their courtyards into homestays or rented them out to people from the city, including many foreigners who have even decided to settle here.
About 40% of the residents are foreigners, mostly from Europe and the US. They visit the Great Wall and then come here to enjoy the beautiful environment and international cuisine. This has boosted local consumption.
Thanks to the growth of the homestay and tourism industry, Beigo Village has created many local jobs.
I used to work in Dali, Yunnan, for a few years, and I loved the natural atmosphere. Now, I see how Beigo Village has rapidly developed into a popular tourist destination. It's great for young people like me who enjoy a slower pace of life.
In the future, they are even planning to introduce an AI village secretary.
We are developing a big AI system that'll have an AI village secretary. This will allow tourists to learn about Beigo in different languages. It will also connect to a healthcare model, so villagers can get basic medical advice through AI.
This village has also established the Beigo Model Research Institute, which welcomes thousands of visitors each year to explore how to drive rural vitalization. So far, Beigo Village has 24 homestays and 2 hotels. Last year, it attracted over 40,000 visits from tourists, with a total income of over 100,000 US dollars. Zhuzhu, CGTN, Beigou Village, Beijing.
Right, so for more on China's rural revitalization efforts and the importance of rural infrastructure, I want to bring in Professor Zhang Chuanhong from the College of Humanities and Development Studies at China Agricultural University. Professor Zhang, welcome to the program as always. So talk to us first about how China views the importance of investing in rural infrastructure when it comes to ensuring economic justice, when it comes to ensuring social inclusion, and of course the future growth for the still hundreds of millions of people living in China's rural areas.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me here. Investing in rural infrastructure is an essential foundation for China to ensure just rural transformation. Is it central to China's national strategy of rural revitalization with the aim to dismantle the structural barrier to rural-urban divide? Now in China, the infrastructure gap between rural and urban areas has been greatly narrowed. Of course, infrastructure here goes beyond transportation connectivity, such as roads, bridges, and bullet trains. Digital and energy infrastructure are also developed in rural areas to ensure rural people have access to broadband internet and participate in e-commerce. Agricultural infrastructure like a high-standard farmland construction, these infrastructure can protect people from climate shocks. China's latest national strategy prioritizes the basic public service equalization, like the quality of schools, hospitals, care centers for the elderly people. All these will be upgraded to narrow the gap between the city and rural areas. So it is a kind of multifunctional and pivotal tool to prevent a return to poverty, unlock the local economic potential, and reduce the gap. I'm currently in the Yunnan village. We are going to host an international conference here on rural transformation. We have quite a lot of guests from ASEAN countries, India, Bangladesh today. Our guests are quite impressed by the advanced infrastructure within the village. Can you imagine, an international conference is held in Chinese villages in Yunnan province?
Yeah, well, Professor, of course, Yunnan has some beautiful rural areas, beautiful countryside areas as well, so do enjoy that conference in Yunnan. But it's not just about the length of the roads being built in China's countryside, right, Professor? There is also a significant focus on the safety of rural infrastructure because we see thousands of speed bumps being installed, bridge renovations, continuous maintenance work throughout the year. From a governance perspective, what does this comprehensive approach to building not just more roads, but safer and better maintained roads signal about how China thinks about the responsibility towards people living in rural areas?
Yeah, of course, safety is key to rural infrastructure. Without safety, all the efforts are meaningless. That's why nowadays, we emphasize high quality development in our national strategy. When we talk about high quality, it does not just mean, the road can be sustained or maintained, but also means that no bad impact on environment and cater to the demands of the local people. This approach is to involve local beneficiaries in decision-making and the construction process. The local people are hired from the very beginning through the work relief program. And this mechanism not only creates job opportunities for the poor household from the government investment, but also ensures these people gain the capacity to maintain the roads. Government provides investment in infrastructure projects, and it forms a kind of virtuous cycle of rural infrastructure in China to ensure the safety and sustainability of these infrastructure and the livelihood of the local people.
Yeah, and Professor Zhang, investing in rural infrastructure, like you alluded to, this is part of China's goal to narrow the gap, the divide between urban and rural areas. So when it comes to the larger picture, how much importance does China actually place on making sure that people in rural areas are not left behind as the country continues to modernize?
Yes, you're right. Infrastructure is just one part of China's overall efforts to narrow the rural-urban gap. China attaches utmost importance on ensuring rural population are not left behind in its whole overall modernization process. As President Xi put it, without modernization of agriculture and rural areas, there cannot be comprehensive modernization of the country as a whole. Rural modernization is considered a fundamental requirement for achieving national rejuvenization and Chinese-style modernization. After achieving absolute poverty elimination, China now is moving forward to a comprehensive long-term strategy on rural revitalization and rural-urban integration. And this has been implemented to make rural areas prosperous and attractive. It is a systematic strategy targeting every dimension of rural life, like industrial prosperity, social equality, environmental sustainability, and effective governance. So indeed, in the future, we think the rural-urban divide will be further narrowed and dismantled.
Okay, we are going to leave it there. Professor Zhang, a pleasure as always. Do enjoy Yunnan for us. That was Professor Zhang Chunhong from China Agricultural University. Well, in the global digital content boom, a fast-paced and popular force has emerged: Chinese vertical short dramas. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry where entire series are shot in less than a week. Our Ankit Prasad is behind the scenes in the world's largest filming complex, Hengdian, for more.
That's me, playing the role of a great warrior who with a pinpoint throw of his dagger saves a damsel in distress from some nasty villains. Why am I here? Because recently an Indian friend of mine introduced me to some Chinese TV dramas that have really caught my attention. And one place symbolizes that perhaps more than any other on earth. I would like to thank. I've made my acting debut, but now I want to show you how the real professionals do it. So come on. Nowadays, vertical short dramas are all the rage, having successfully broken through in China and globally. The bite-sized industry is delivering big growth. It's out-earning movies at the box office domestically and is projected to rake in over $11 billion in global revenues in 2025. Your production, please tell us more about it.
我们现在拍的是一个玄幻题材的，就是南平。我们这个剧每集大概2分钟左右。总共是70多集，我们剧组的话总共大概是60-70人左右，总周期的话是在6-7天这个样子。
I thought I hit the jackpot, meeting 5 film crews in just one film park. But this is just another afternoon in Hengdian. Do you film a lot in Hengdian?
我是经常来横店，因为我是出道在于横店，我们很大量的人脉呀，还有机会啊，基本都很多无四海的。老朋友们，还有一些新朋友们，都会在这里聚在一起，对，互相学习。
In Hengdian, there are over 50 real-life film locations like this, and over 130 studios. It's a real-life dream factory, and the undisputed home of Chinese historical dramas. How do the beautiful facilities that you have at Hengdian help crews that come to film vertical videos?
主要是疏远短剧的拍摄的过程中的吃住行场景等。所有的这个一站式服务，到上周我们总共接待了大概3500个左右。速分短剧，说实话，它是一个短平快的这么一个节奏的一个影视拍摄，所以呢，我们会在推出符合它的一些相关政策，可能有些场景 有些场景可能是提前就预制好了，他进去就是直接能拍，他们就是随着场景费，就是原来可能价格是高的，我们把它调整成低的。
For production teams, lower costs also lead to higher profits.
目前来说，这个短剧的话，市场盈利我们是在国内发行嘛，和平台分账这样的方式，收益相对来说还可以了。播的好的投资回报比可能是在200%、300%这样的，因为微短剧其实给整个影视工作者、给整个行业都带来很多新的机遇，对演员来说也有更多的出路。
对于我个人而言吧，短剧确实是给了我们这些就刚毕业，然后没有什么知名度，以及没有什么社会关系以及舞台经验的新演员来说，提供了一个很好的平台，让我们有展现自己的一个机会。
I decided to find out more about how young actors seize opportunities.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to
I'm
meet you.
Ankit. Nice to meet you.
So before we start, I want to show you our CV for actors. This is mine.
Wow, these are such good photos. You're both giving me a complex.
罗宇啊，谢谢。
这个事儿啊，给弄砸了，他就很愤怒。
废！周永昌那个废物，不仅人没抓到，还惊动了警察。
惊动了警察又如何？警察去了也找不到证据。
Bravo, bravo, well done.
Thank you.
So, what kind of roles do you generally play?
The villain, the evil guy,
Is it?
the mean girl. Actually, I don't think it's a bad thing.
I know a good role can feel like very goody two shoes, but with a villain, you can make an impact on the audience and you can be very memorable. How many such dramas have you acted in?
I've been act more than 20. In Hangdian, there are so many different ways that you can get a job as an actor.
But what is it about Hangdian? What makes it so special?
I think it's because this is a really special place. It's very small and it's all about this industry. The companies, the castings, the actors, they stay here.
China's video entertainment industry is projected to reach $30 billion in 2025 and is poised to accelerate in coming years. And industrialized development, as seen in Hangdian, is making China the hub of emerging formats like vertical dramas.
接下去我们会造一些就是国外的一些场景，来让更多的这个就像前面所说的这个外籍的这个团队来到我们横店拍摄。
In Hangdian, apart from the large number of teams filming simultaneously, the high quality and intricacy of their productions also surprised me.
特效的话，刚开始我们短剧以前可能是没有预算做一些特效，然后可能会做的就比较常规大手说的5毛钱特效，但是还好我自己拍的每一部玄幻带特效的剧，我们都会找一些专业的电影编剧，甚至是院线的北京的比较大的团队去做这些特效，做出的画面可能就接近一些电影上的味道。
When it comes to visual effects, the grand spectacle of sci-fi space operas and epic fantasies is something that I particularly enjoy. I visited More VFX, a studio that has worked on some of the most visually spectacular Chinese blockbusters.
你好，我是 More 的视效总监李帅。
Whoa, this is lovely.
Yeah,
this is nice. The Wandering Earth series and Writer's Odyssey have become mega franchises, and I was keen to know how they bring these monumental adventures to life. Is there any scene in the reel that we just saw that particularly you recall for some reason that is special for you?
4小2里面，我们主要攻克的就是这个赤发的这个秘书，这个饕餮之术，就是他这个头发疯狂疯长的这个一个视觉效果，一直持续到我们那个胶片之前，其实我们都还在磨这些那个头发的细节效果。像这一颗镜头里面就大概有150万根的毛发， 确实在以往的项目没有类似的这样的一个经验，所以好多都是从头去摸索。
I wanted to experience for myself how these amazing effects are created step by step.
你能看出来哪些东西是 CG 的吗？
Look, this looks like it's something really burning. I don't know, is the fire CGI? The background is CGI. No, the background is also real. No, I can't tell.
只有这2个人是拍摄的，其他东西全是 CG 的。接下来咱体验一下比较有意思的，这个节点它是用来调节亮度和颜色的。You can try.
Or I can make it vanish, and then I can make it burn white hot. We'll settle for a nice, cute yellow fire. How many nodes? How complex is it?
这个镜头我们大概用了3000个节点，就大概用了7个月的时间。
That's just incredible. It looks like it's impossible for a normal person to do.
这条路我们工作比较累，或者是脑子没有灵感的时候，会经常过来走一走，放松一下。然后，它很有特点，每一块的这个砖上面会有一些很著名的电影的一些经典台词。看到这个，我们就能想起我们当初那熬夜的每一个夜晚。不过非常值得，非常棒的一部片子。印度电影也很棒，就是你们每一部片子都会有歌舞这种东西，它是一个硬性的需求吗？
Yeah, back then, definitely. Without songs, there cannot be a movie. Now, today's movies, they don't have so many songs necessarily. दीदार उनका होता है कैसे कहूँ मैं ओ यारों ये प्यार कैसे होता है.
While my Bollywood moment probably won't land me a leading role here, it did remind me that Hengdian isn't just for professionals.
Every year there's like around 20 million tourists there. The tourism is like almost the major income of the studio, but also filming services make us famous.
In fact, Hengdian's appeal as a filming location is matched only by its charm as a tourist destination. Here, anyone can step into a scene and live out their own cinematic fantasy.
Hello, baby.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome to China.
Thank you.
来这边呢，就体验一下演戏。3、2、1，开始。Look at me 啊。
Okay.
这都是朕的天下。OK。
Okay.
来。
就都天下很少。
皇上。
Sorry.
那我就走了，宝贝儿。
He's wrong.
This place is so much bigger than expected. It was nice, but I like this place even better because the lights are just so magical. It's very cool. I didn't expect it at all.
Strolling through Hengdian, my sense of time seems to have disappeared entirely. Here I can break free from the constraints of reality, wear many masks, and experience 1,000 different lives. Everyone I meet is also weaving their own dreams of light and shadow, telling fascinating stories, and together supporting the vitality of China's film and television industry. Perhaps one day, I too will smile and say to my friends, take a look at this hit Chinese drama series that I starred in.
Our Ankit Prasad there having way too much fun at the Hengdian World Studios. Well, China Media Group has held a major robotics exhibition in Shenzhen to showcase the integration of robots into urban governance. The event featured competitive demonstrations and new product displays with robots performing tasks such as climbing slopes and collecting scattered debris with precision. Over 40 companies participated in 115 competition rounds across more than 40 simulated urban scenarios, rigorously testing the robot's practical performance. Beyond the arena, an accompanying conference connected studio, community, and corporate settings to accelerate the application of AI technologies in various services.
I never expected that cleaning robots could adapt to so many complex scenes and terrains. If they could be widely and extensively used, they could solve many difficult problems and reduce corresponding risks.
And still to come here on Global Business. France's President Emmanuel Macron is set to begin a state visit to China with talks focused on bilateral relations and the future of multilateralism.
Hainan writes a new chapter in China's modernization with the launch of special customs operations from December 18th. Increasing tax-free tariff lines from 21% to 74%, ensuring the free cross-border flow of goods, people, and capital. Hainan is China's firm commitment to high standard opening up, to advance economic globalization and share opportunities for prosperity with the world. Join us for our special coverage of this historic milestone in Hainan's journey and China's continuing trade liberalization. Only on CGTN.
To China-France relations, where French President Emmanuel Macron will pay a state visit to China from Wednesday to Friday. Now, this will be Mr. Macron's fourth state visit to China. Chinese President Xi Jinping is to hold talks with Macron to discuss bilateral relations and major international issues. China says it's ready to work with France to strengthen ties and deepen cooperation.
Amid an evolving international landscape fraught with turmoil, China is ready to work with France to take this visit as an opportunity to strengthen strategic communication, deepen pragmatic cooperation, advance closer multilateral coordination, and work for new progress in the China-France Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. By doing so, the two countries will contribute more to promoting the healthy and stable development of China-EU relations, upholding multilateralism, and safeguarding world peace, stability, and prosperity.
And to explore the goals and expectations of this high-level engagement, CGTN has spoken with two former French prime ministers, a former senior trade official, as well as a leading scholar.
This visit is something of a tradition. Every year, the French president wanted to go to China, and the Chinese president also comes regularly to France. They have much to discuss, especially as we look ahead to 2026, when France will chair the G7. That will certainly be one of the key topics. Naturally, the international situation will be central to their talks, particularly the future of multilateralism, which faces challenges today. Both France and China are committed to a multilateral approach, one that promotes peace and balanced global governance. There are also many bilateral issues to address, such as economic and cultural issues. This annual high-level dialogue is essential to advancing our shared projects and bringing our two countries closer together.
If we want to solve the world's main problems, we must have a multilateral approach. None of today's major issues can be solved by a single country. This desire to work together is the fundamental point of convergence between China and France.
We're in a moment of great global upheaval, with the balance of power shifting. China will naturally be a major power in the international system. So a new balance must be found, which requires statesmen with a long-term vision. I believe your president has such a vision.
Well, Japan's consumer confidence improved for a fourth consecutive month in November. That is according to official data released earlier today, although concerns about persistent inflation continue to temper household outlooks. The country's consumer confidence index rose to 37.5 last month, exceeding market forecasts. However, the survey indicated that rising living costs do remain a key challenge, with 90.6% of respondents expecting prices to increase in the coming period. Now, that figure, while still high, reflected a slight decline of 2 percentage points compared to October. Meanwhile, yields on Japan's long-term treasury bonds have retreated slightly after hitting record levels on Monday, though they do remain at elevated levels amid investor concerns over the country's economic outlook. The yield on 30-year ultra-long bonds is close to its peak of 3.4%, while the 10-year yield is still above 1.8%. The sell-off in short-term bonds accelerated on Tuesday, with yields on 1-month and 2-month notes also climbing. The recent market volatility has been partly driven by the Bank of Japan governor's earlier hints at future rate hikes. Some analysts believe the government's recent approval of a supplementary budget proposal, which accelerates defense spending to an unprecedented 2% of GDP, has also sparked concerns. In a recent survey in Japan shows that over 20,000 food items have seen price hikes this year, and that's up 60% compared with last year. The survey, conducted by Japan's Teikoku Data Bank, involved 195 major food and beverage producers across the country and inquired about their price adjustment plans this year. The data bank says the increase in food prices is related to rising costs of raw materials, energy, and labor. It also reflects Japan's recent core CPI, excluding fresh food, which rose by 3% on year in October, marking the 50th straight month of year-on-year increase. Now, foods with the greatest price hikes include rice, that's up nearly 40%, chocolate is up nearly 37%, and coffee bean prices jumped around 53% on year. And over 40% of scheduled flights from China to Japan in December have been canceled. That's about 1,900 flights. A Chinese cruise operator, Adora, has adjusted its December itinerary to bypass several Japanese ports. It has also canceled all Japanese port calls for the first quarter of 2026. Now, recently, businesses across Japan have reported a significant drop in Chinese tourists, with group tours canceled and revenue declining. Industry insiders warn that if the situation persists through the Spring Festival holiday in February, that impact could escalate even further.
Ever since our hotel opened in 2018, we have relied heavily on guests from China. Even before gaining domestic recognition, Chinese visitors made up 20 to 30% of our customer base. The recent wave of cancellations is deeply concerning. For Okinawa's tourism industry, both group and individual travelers from China were highly anticipated. The current situation is really worrying.
Cruise tourism is vital for Okinawa. Our biggest concern is that if this continues into January and February next year, the impact could reach tens of thousands of people. These months are traditionally off-season here, and Chinese tourists are especially important to us during this period. If they stop coming, the blow to our business will be severe.
All right, here's what else we are tracking at this hour. New Zealand's new central bank governor, Anna Bremen, saying the bank's core mandate is to keep inflation low and stable in order to support overall economic growth. The China Last Railway has now recorded 62.5 million passenger trips and shipped over 72 million tons of goods during its 4 years of operation. Freight costs from southwest China's Kunming to Thailand have been reduced by at least 30%. And consumer prices in the Republic of Korea rose 2.4% annually for the month of November, slightly easing from the previous month and bolstering the case for the central bank to keep interest rates at the current level for longer. All right, time for another short break. Up next here on Global Business. A key survey shows U.S. factory activity contracted for a 9th straight month in November as tariff uncertainty and supply chain pressures weigh on the U.S. economy.
A vast land of 1.4 billion people. The world's second largest economy. Home to stories of the unexpected, the unimaginable, the breathtaking. Stories that touch the soul. Feel the speed, the passion. Enjoy spectacular natural and cultural landscapes. Feel the thrill of cutting-edge innovations. Discovering China. Global Biz. China Travel. We present to China never seen before. 24/7 at your fingertips.
Well, the U.S. has exempted British pharmaceuticals from import tariffs following a bilateral agreement. Now, under that deal, the UK will raise the net price it pays for new medicines by 25%. Now, this supposedly addresses what U.S. officials described as long-standing trade imbalances where American patients subsidized drugs abroad. The exemption spares the UK from 15% tariffs imposed on October 1st that still apply to the EU and Switzerland. The UK government says the deal will protect the country's pharmaceutical industry and cement its place as a world leader for life science investment. In a separate press release, the U.S. Trade Representative's office says the Trump administration is encouraging other trading partners to pursue similar negotiations. Meanwhile, a key U.S. manufacturing index has fallen for a 9th consecutive month. The Institute for Supply Management's reading dropped to 48.2 in November, remaining below that key 50-point mark separating growth from contraction. While production showed some improvement, that survey noted declines when it comes to new orders and employment alongside rising prices. Several industries, including chemical producers and electrical equipment manufacturers, cited ongoing trade policy uncertainty and tariffs as significant factors continuing to dampen business conditions and cloud the overall supply chain outlook. Well, retail data from this Thanksgiving holiday, which is regarded as a key barometer of U.S. consumption, has drawn significant attention and U.S. policy measures affecting the country's economy. Now, some new trends emerged during this year's shopping season as e-commerce saw a significant increase. Our Mitch McCann has more.
As you've just heard Siobhan talk about, and one of the interesting things I think she had to say is what we heard from people on the street as well this year. There are economic concerns, particularly around tariffs, around slowing job growth as well. And what people told us is that they were still willing to spend money, but they wanted to spend money on more or larger items, rather than many items. We spoke to one man on Friday. He was buying a handbag with his wife, and it was an expensive one. And he said we'd rather spend money on one big expensive purchase this year rather than 12 lower cost items. So I think that's something we've seen across the board as well. Retailers are doing well, particularly retailers that sell jewellery and apparel, that we've seen large rises there over the last 3 days. But really what Siobhan pointed to is retailers online have done very well. Customers spent around $11.8 billion on online purchases on Friday. That's around a 9% increase on last year. And another set of data shows that in-store sales are up as well, 1.7%. And I think one of the things we considered on Friday before Black Friday, or as it was getting off to a start, was whether or not people were actually going to go in store. Of course, it's getting very cold here in the US, as well as those economic concerns. But as we've seen, people are willing to shop up a storm as well. And Cyber Monday, it's been estimated that shoppers will spend around $14 billion today, a $6.3 billion increase on last year. So despite the cold, despite the economic concerns, people are still looking for bargains.
And during this U.S. holiday shopping season, there's one item that may be on many people's gift lists, the Labubu doll. Now, the popular Chinese toy continues to ring up sales and provide an economic boost to numerous cities. Our Mark New reports.
Over the past 2 years, Pop Mart, makers of the Chinese plush toy Labubu, has opened up more than 140 stores and vending machines in the U.S. 2 have recently opened in San Francisco, like this one at Stonestown Galleria Shopping Mall. The Ozus are showing around friends visiting from Turkey, and Pop Mart was an important stop.
This is the first Labubu for her.
He is crazy about Labubu. She is crazy about Labubu, but we could just find the chance to come here.
Some shoppers think the Labubu craze is dropping off slightly, but they're still here buying other Pop Mart toys.
I'm kind of a collector, so I've always collected a little bit of everything, but I do think people are kind of moving a little bit on from the Labubu to kind of other Pop Mart stuff, but still within Pop Mart.
But retail experts say hard-to-get Labubu models are still fetching high prices in second-hand markets, and Pop Mart stores are still doing brisk business.
So it's gone really viral on TikTok. People post unboxing videos. It's, probably the most sought after toy, if you want to call it a toy, for the Christmas season this year.
San Francisco was slow to recover from the COVID pandemic. Stores and restaurants were left empty as many workers stayed home and worked remotely.
That's why it was welcome news in October when Pop Mart held a grand opening for its second San Francisco store in the famed Union Square area. It's taken up residence in a space that had been vacant since 2019. At the new two-story location, business was nonstop in the middle of the day on a weekday.
I probably have 10, and I used to buy them only on TikTok Shop, but I happened to walk past a little Pop Mart, and we said, let's try our luck, and we were successful.
Pretty nice. I already got a full set of this one, but I just wanted to get one more.
I think it's definitely helping, drive traffic to downtown, which we need on Powell Street. So many shops have closed, so it's nice to see this driving traffic back here.
Some store posts that they have Labubus, there's a line out the door. So there's a rabid following on social media, and when this is done, kind of like in whether it's strip malls or regular malls or whatever, everyone in that area is going to see the benefit of that, because there's people posting that they will drive an hour or two to go get a Labubu.
Carrie says Labubu's blind box marketing concept has also caught on with other companies, ranging from Nike to Sephora to Lego. It's still providing excitement for new customers, too, who say that the idea of you don't know what you get until you open it does exceedingly well at getting you to come back for more. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
And that's going to wrap up this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. You can always follow us on social media platforms, including on Facebook, X, and YouTube. The show is also available on major podcast platforms as well. Simply search for Global Business to listen on your favorite podcast app. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. We'll see you again next time.
Hello and welcome to the latest weather update. I'm Tianyi. We'll over to China. A relatively strong cold wave is shivering the majority of China, and under its influence, many of the northern portion already witnessed sharp decline in temperatures by about 10 degrees Celsius during the last 24 hours from Monday morning into this morning. Well, as the cold wave plunges downward, many of the southern portion will begin to feel the plummet in the maximum temperatures today, and this trend will continue by the time we get into Wednesday. And with that in mind, we're looking at a huge portion shown as the blue shades on this map to experience the lowest temperatures so far this season over the next couple of days. Many of the areas in this blue shadings will experience the minimum temperatures in the negative readings. For instance, here -9 for Beijing on Wednesday and -8 in the city of Lanzhou. And it seems like the Northeast will probably experience the coldest readings. For instance, -21 for Harbin and -17 in the city of Shenyang. Well, actually, apart from these two cities, the majority of the Northeast will experience the minimum temperatures to be below -15 degrees Celsius on Wednesday. Even for the daytime highs will also be in the sub-zero readings. Take a closer look at temperatures trend in the city of Harbin. No positive readings in temperatures for the whole 3 days of Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So please bundle up, particularly during the morning and evening hours.
ambassador to the United Nations sends another letter to the UN chief refuting Japan's arguments on Taiwan as unreasonable. French President Emmanuel Macron will make a state visit to China with bilateral relations and the future of multilateralism on the agenda. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Paris to bolster European support as Kiev considers the U.S. proposed plan to end the conflict with Russia. And the death toll from flooding across Asia tops 1,200 as the WHO sends response teams and medical supplies. Hello and welcome from Beijing. This is The World Today. I'm Wang Mengmang. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Song, says China firmly opposes Japan's latest letter to the United Nations, accusing Tokyo of evading key issues and attempting to shift blame. Here are the details.
China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Song, has delivered another letter to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, rejecting Japan's arguments over Taiwan as unreasonable and reiterating China's position on the Taiwan question. Fu said the direct cause of the current differences between China and Japan is Prime Minister Sana Takaichi's provocative remarks that implied Japan would militarily intervene in the Taiwan question. Fu's letter comes after his Japanese counterpart Kazuki Yamazaki sent a letter to the UN chief, saying Japan's position on issues concerning Taiwan is consistent. The Chinese envoy urged Japan to provide an explanation of its consistent position, citing multiple legally binding documents. Fu said Takaichi's remarks violate the commitments Japan has made. Fu reiterated that Taiwan is Chinese territory, and Takaichi's linkage of Japan's, quote, survival-threatening situation with the Taiwan contingency goes beyond its passive defense strategy. Regarding Yamazaki's insinuation at defense development of other countries, Fu said the international community must remain vigilant against Japan's ambitions to expand its military capabilities and revive militarism. He also said Takaichi's words and deeds have severely undermined mutual trust and damaged the political foundation of China-Japan ties. He urged Japan to demonstrate its sincerity with clear reaffirmation of the One China principle, immediate retraction of the erroneous remarks, and practical steps to honor its commitments to China.
Kyodo News reports Japan has held informal talks with the Philippines on exporting its Type 03 medium-range surface-to-air missile system as the Takaichi government moves to relax Japan's defense export restrictions. Citing multiple sources, Kyodo says the administration plans to abolish current rules that limit defense exports to 5 non-combat categories, possibly as early as the first half of next year. Once a formal decision is made, concrete talks on the missile export could move forward quickly. Kyodo notes the move signals Tokyo's push to expand arms exports, but the lack of full parliamentary debate has already raised concerns. China's Coast Guard says it has expelled a Japanese fishing vessel that illegally entered waters of the Diaoyudao on Tuesday. Authorities say Chinese ships issued warnings and took necessary control measures before driving the vessel away. Beijing has reaffirmed the Diaoyudao as its inherent territory and urged Japan to stop all provocative actions. Patrols will continue in the area to safeguard China's sovereignty and maritime rights. And China has slammed recent efforts by Japan to expand its military. Beijing warns the move as a betrayal of Japan's pacifist constitution and could resurrect militarism in the country. Our reporter Zhao Yunfei is live for us from Beijing. Well, Yunfei, what has been the latest response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry on this issue?
Well, Maman, as Japan says that its positions on China's Taiwan question has been consistent, here at the Chinese Foreign Ministry, China once again calls on the Japan side to clearly state that what is its statement and position on the Taiwan question. Here, the Chinese Foreign Ministry, the spokesperson Lin Jian says that Japan has always been vague when it comes to Taiwan. He cited the UN Charter that when it comes to international relationship, the member states should not use threat. But clearly, the Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi's statement is a threat, citing an excuse of survival situation. Taiwan is part of China. It's part of the international order and the post-World War II order. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. Spokesperson Lin Jian urged the international community to stay alert of the re-emergence of militarism.
Japan has step by step hollowed out the provisions explicitly set forth for Japan in the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Declaration, and betrayed its own commitments under the Japanese constitution. It is Japan itself that is expanding its military power, coercing other countries, and ignoring the opposition of neighbouring nations in an attempt to unilaterally change the status quo. China firmly opposes Japan's retrogressive actions that challenge the post-war international order and its attempts to resurrect militarism.
In the letter addressing UN General Antonio Guterres, Fu Cong says that the Japanese side is implying military intervention to Taiwan. He cited the Sino-Japanese joint statement saying that the government of Japan recognized that the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government of China. And he says that the Japanese side should bear consequences for its wrongdoing. Now back to you.
Our Zhao Yunfei following the latest for us from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Thanks so much, Yunfei, for that update. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is facing a strong backlash at home and abroad over her remarks on Taiwan. Political and economic commentator Koga Shigechi has called her comments extremely reckless and out of step with mainstream public opinion.
Collective self-defense itself violates the Constitution. This has long been the mainstream view. Among those of us with formal legal training, including constitutional law scholars, about 99% believe it is unconstitutional. On historical issues, Takaichi's views mirror those of right-wing hardliners. No matter the criticism, she refuses to acknowledge any mistakes. It reflects the same reluctance to admit Japan's past wrongdoings and her own.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
French President Emmanuel Macron will pay a state visit to China from December 3rd to 5th at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. While this marks his fourth trip to China, and Beijing says the visit reciprocates President Xi's state visit to France last year and comes as the two countries mark 60 years of diplomatic relations. CGTN has spoken with former French prime ministers and officials on their expectations of this high-level engagement.
This visit is something of a tradition. Every year, the French president wanted to go to China, and the Chinese president also comes regularly to France. They have much to discuss, especially as we look ahead to 2026, when France will chair the G7. That will certainly be one of the key topics. Naturally, the international situation will be central to their talks, particularly the future of multilateralism, which faces challenges today. Both France and China are committed to a multilateral approach, one that promotes peace and balanced global governance. There are also many bilateral issues to address, such as economic and cultural issues. This annual high-level dialogue is essential to advancing our shared projects and bringing our two countries closer together.
If we want to solve the world's main problems, we must have a multilateral approach. None of today's major issues can be solved by a single country. This desire to work together is the fundamental point of convergence between China and France.
To strengthen international cooperation, we urgently need to establish a global carbon credit market. Like Europe, China already has its own domestic carbon market. If we can build a reliable and well-regulated global carbon market, our response to climate changes will become much more efficient. In my view, it would be highly beneficial for France and China to work together to advance the creation of a truly global carbon market and a strict, verifiable carbon credit system. I believe we should initiate discussions with China on this matter and jointly promote the establishment of a global carbon credit market.
We're in a moment of great global upheaval, with the balance of power shifting. China will naturally be a major power in the international system, so a new balance must be found, which requires statesmen with a long-term vision. I believe your president has such a vision.
Now, as part of China-Europe space cooperation, France has received a lunar sample from China's Chang'e 5 moon mission. The handover marks a new milestone in international space collaboration. Scientists in Paris are preparing to analyze the fragment, and they hope it'll reveal clues about the moon's volcanic activity and early evolution of the solar system. Sarah Coates reports from Paris.
Under lock and key at France's most prestigious university, this tiny fragment, barely a speck to the eye, is part of the 1.7 kilogram haul brought back from the moon by China's landmark mission in 2020. Estimated to be around 2 billion years old, it holds clues to a chapter of lunar history we've never seen before.
Because most of the lunar samples we had were very old, and we are basing our understanding of the surface of the moon. When you look at the moon, you have plenty of craters, and we use the age of the rocks to try to calibrate how many craters you have at different ages. I think these very young samples can really fill up the gap for young ages to get a much better chronology of the surface of the moon.
Inside these labs, preparations are underway to begin testing within weeks. Professor Moynier and his team are focusing on one of the moon's biggest mysteries.
And so my science has been to understand why the moon, which is so close to us, has no water, while the Earth is covered in water. And so all my research before was based on Apollo samples. And so what I want to do on this sample is look at my like water, hydrogen, volatile elements to try to understand better how the moon is formed.
The team will also compare this fragment with other lunar samples to map the moon's interior and reconstruct its volcanic timeline, data that could refine future lunar missions.
This rare handover isn't just about science. It signals growing collaboration between China and Europe when it comes to space exploration. Now, by handing over this very precious sample, China is showing that it's a major player in lunar science and diplomacy.
For France, it's a scientific win and a chance to make discoveries that could shape the future of planetary science.
I think because China and France, right now they have a very good connection and relationship between the two countries. So it is a good opportunity for our students to do such a research.
And while this type of exchange between China and France is a first, Professor Moynier hopes it's just the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship as the world prepares for a new space race, one built on collaboration rather than competition. Sarah Coates, CGTN, Paris.
Germany and Poland have taken a significant step toward healing their difficult wartime past. Berlin is formally returning cultural treasures looted by the Nazis and has agreed to build a joint memorial in the German capital to Polish victims. The centerpiece of this handover is a 14th century statue fragment of St. James the Great, alongside 73 medieval manuscripts. They were taken from Warsaw in 1941 during the German occupation and originally came from the city of Gdansk and the Warsaw Central Archive. German and Polish leaders said the planned Berlin Memorial will be a place of remembrance, a warning against tyranny, and a lasting symbol of their reconciliation. The returns followed a day of cabinet-level consultations between the two governments. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been in Paris seeking to bolster European support during talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. Their meeting at the Élysée Palace comes as Kiev considers the peace plan proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, a plan that many European countries fear could concede too much to Moscow. Zelensky's visit follows Ukraine's talks with U.S. officials in Florida and precedes a planned meeting between a U.S. representative and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Ross Collin reports from Paris.
We've been watching that news conference between Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron, the two men holding that conference after they had had one-on-one talks inside the Élysée Palace a little bit earlier on. Let me bring you some of those lines that have come out of that. Emmanuel Macron saying that there will be discussions in the coming days between the United States and members of the Coalition of the Willings. This is a group of some 30 or so Western nations that back Ukraine about security guarantees, potentially the very next day after a ceasefire is agreed. Could we see that reassurance force, that much discussed possible force of French and British troops inside Ukraine agreed? Will the US sign off on a NATO Article 5 style security guarantee for Ukraine? So further discussions in the coming days confirmed by Emmanuel Macron. Also, we heard from Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, thanking President Trump for the work the US administration is doing, thanking the European allies for their steadfast support for Ukraine, but also lamenting the fact that there are ongoing attacks at the moment in what Russia describes as the special military operation, what Ukraine describes as a war. And we know that Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky agreed that there has to be a just and lasting peace. And Volodymyr Zelensky saying that, in his opinion, Russia started this conflict, so Russia should end it.
Well, peace talks are once again raising hopes for a deal to end the Ukraine conflict. But in Kiev, many residents say they're not optimistic, pointing to continued attacks and daily uncertainty. Evangelos Sipsis reports from Kiev.
People seem to be tired of all of these talks and what is going on here in the country of Ukraine. There are talks that are taking place. The people here, of course, are looking to the news to see what is going on. They're following these developments in the US, but also in France. But they're not optimistic that this will lead to something. They're very cautious of how they're thinking about these talks. They feel that no breakthrough would actually happen. Attacks continue to take place here in Ukraine, especially earlier on Monday. There was an attack in the Dnipro region where 4 people lost their lives and several were injured. So all these images of attacks, sirens going off, people rushing to the shelters, is not really sitting well with regular people, especially here in the capital of Kyiv, who say that, while these talks are taking place, I still have to cover myself and I still have to cover my family because I don't know when the next attack will happen. It has become a pattern for them.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed a threat from U.S. President Donald Trump to exclude Pretoria from next year's G20 summit. Ramaphosa called the remarks baseless, reaffirming that South Africa is a founding member of the group.
A few days ago, President Donald Trump made a statement to the effect that South Africa would not be invited to participate in the G20 in the United States. He repeated untrue statements about genocide against Afrikaners and the confiscation of land from white people in our country. We must make it clear that South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20, and South Africa is therefore a member of the G20 in its own name and right. We will continue to participate as a full, active and constructive member of the G20. Despite the challenges and misunderstandings that have arisen between South Africa and the United States,
Ramaphosa made these comments in a national address. This comes after South Africa presided over November's G20 Leader Summit, which Washington chose not to attend. Ramaphosa called the U.S. absence, which was based on what he called misinformation, regrettable. President Trump had cited allegations of white genocide in South Africa as his reason for skipping this meeting. And despite the ongoing tensions, South Africa has now formally handed over the G20 presidency to the United States for 2026, in line with diplomatic protocol. Ramaphosa stressed that Pretoria values its relationship with Washington and remains committed to dialogue.
Hainan writes a new chapter in China's modernization with the launch of special customs operations from December 18th, increasing tax-free tariff lines from 21% to 74%, ensuring the free cross-border flow of goods, people, and capital. Hainan is China's firm commitment to high standard opening up, to advance economic globalization and share opportunities for prosperity with the world. Join us for our special coverage of this historic milestone in Hainan's journey and China's continuing trade liberalization. Only on CGTN.
Floods and landslides across South and Southeast Asia have killed more than 1,200 people. Sri Lanka has suffered its heaviest damage since the 2004 tsunami, with entire communities buried by landslides. The death toll has now risen to 410, with 336 others remaining missing. Troops and helicopters are reaching areas still cut off. And in Indonesia, areas of Sumatra remain underwater after rare back-to-back storms. Warships and hospital ships are delivering aid to villages where roads have collapsed. Now, southern Thailand is also enduring one of its deadliest flood events in a decade. Its disaster response has prompted public criticism and the suspension of 2 local officials. Malaysia continues large-scale evacuations as swollen rivers inundate northern states. Now, the World Health Organization has deployed rapid response teams and medical supplies. The UN agency warns that climate change is intensifying extreme weather across the region. Robert Purba reports from Indonesia.
Behind me, you'll see this road that's cut off by landslides with visible debris like mud and rocks. Authorities are still using heavy machinery to clear the debris. It's Monday afternoon right now, and they told me that they've been working on this since this morning.
This is the main road in Aidan Koting that connects many areas in North Tapanuli in North Sumatra, now completely cut off. It also leads to the port city of Sibolga, one of the hardest hit areas, damaged by landslides and flash floods as a result of heavy rain in recent days. Flash floods began almost a week ago. Monsoon rains damaged homes, roads, and knocked down power lines.
We don't know what to do. Please help us repair our home just so we have somewhere to sleep at night.
This resident currently sleeps at a neighbor's house as her home is filled with mud and debris.
My child is in Sibolga. We don't know if she is doing okay.
Residents here have no way of contacting family. There's been no power and no phone reception in the area for the past 6 days.
Home appliances, clothes, my bed. We can't use any of it. Everything went underwater.
This person works as a truck driver and is forced to stay at the nearest shelter with his toddler. Residents say food, water, medicine, and clothing are desperately needed in the region. Indonesian relief officials say warships loaded with aid have been sent from Jakarta. At least 600 people have died in Indonesia so far, and many are still missing. Roberlin Purba, CGTN, Aidan Koting, North Sumatra.
Saudi capital Riyadh has hosted the Boao Forum for Asia regional meeting for a second straight year. In this forum, organizers spotlighted the region's consensus on resilience, digitalization, and green growth. CGTN correspondent Adam Al-Makroui asked Secretary General Zhang Jun how the forum went and what's next for the region's partners.
As the conference concluded, what have been the main tracks that everyone has agreed to pursue and the challenges you're going to work together against?
As we are seeing nowadays that our world is really encountered with many challenges given the rise of unilateralism and protectionism, in particular the ongoing tariff war. Against such a background, economic security resilience is becoming more evident and more important in comparison with a normal situation. Meanwhile, what we are also seeing is that our world is also undergoing a profound transformation. I mean, from the economic perspective, we are also seeing a rapid transformation, and digitalization and green transition are really leading the general direction of this transformation. So we believe that even though the transformation may bring us some challenges, some difficulties, even for weak economies, that will be really the case. But meanwhile, in general, the transformation will bring us more opportunities. Of course, if we can do it in the right way, say through further investment in future industries. And through the discussions, I think we do have a lot of consensus, a lot of common understandings. It's the general view of the participants that against such a complicated international backdrop. And meanwhile, regional cooperation may also unleash new potentials and new opportunities for regional countries. And we all believe that with our joint efforts, we can really find new potentials, and also we can create new opportunities. And among the discussions, many participants also highly appreciate the leading role played by China in further opening up to the outside, in undertaking strategic measures in catching up with the new tendencies of global transformation, and also in actively engaged in global efforts on climate change, on sustainable development.
All right, now here's a recap of the major stories we've been following for you this hour. China's UN envoy Fu Cong sends another letter to the UN chief refuting Japan's arguments on Taiwan as unreasonable. French President Emmanuel Macron will make a state visit to China with bilateral relations and the future of multilateralism on the agenda. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Paris to bolster European support as Kiev considers the U.S. proposed plan to end the conflict with Russia. And the death toll from flooding across Asia tops 1,200 as the WHO sends response teams and medical supplies. Well, that's all the time we have for this hour's The World Today. I'm Wang Wang. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for The Vibe coming up next.
vibe. Crafting cultural connections. Chinese teapots and French crystal highlight commonalities in craftsmanship among continents. Labyrinths of longevity. Young scholars meet to discuss cultural preservation of Chinese cave temples and carvings in Dazhu. Rolling out the white carpet. From a 6-day Arctic tour to air shuttles and skiing bonanzas, winter tourism hits a new high in northern China. Bronze Age bounty. Wonders of Sanxingdui archaeological site wing their way from Sichuan to historic halls of Oxford University. Hey there and welcome to The Vibe on CGTN. I'm your host Leonie Zimmer in Beijing. Thanks for tuning in. Here at The Vibe, we're your go-to destination for all things art and culture every weekday. From the delicate craftsmanship of Yixing Zisha teapots to the intricate glass artistry of St. Louis crystal, we take a look at the rich heritage behind these two masterful traditions. We discover how these crafts connect China and Europe, blending history, skill, and cultural expression.
Think of China, and porcelain probably comes to mind. But Yixing in the east of the country is home to another very distinct type of pottery.
This city is famed for its Zisha teapots. The clay and artistry used to make them are unique.
Over in Europe, Paul is getting to grips with a completely different artistic tradition.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Welcome to Crossing Cultures. Join us as we explore the ties that bind both China and Europe.
Creating a Zisha clay teapot is a meticulous endeavor. Deeply rooted in Yixing culture, a key part of this rich heritage involves carving. Ke Qingyu is a specialist.
Recognized for her intricate work, she skillfully incorporates Chinese calligraphy and painting into her designs.
我们是把我们中国传统画融入在我们的这个紫砂壶上。那我们要做到的呢，就是以刀代笔，用我们非常坚硬的刻刀刻出这个画面的效果。我们中国画讲究的是笔墨浓淡，那我们那个刀就是刻出这种笔墨浓淡的一个效果。那主要就是用这个刀面去刻。
Zisha clay epitomizes Chinese culture. This versatile material is used to make teapots, vases, and more. Imagery and calligraphy often adorn each piece to convey deep cultural meaning.
你手里的这个紫砂壶是半成品，
它的烧制以后啊，它肯定是会缩小的。我们的这个泥它是有收缩比的。我在做这款壶的时候，我是想要把我们那个冬天的这个竹子融入在这个壶面上。这把壶不仅仅用了陶刻的手法，我还用了泥绘的手法。那泥绘也是我们紫砂的这个白泥，把它当做颜料一样做这个装饰。相当于这个画面用到的是减法和加法的手法。
就是刻是减法，
对，泥
绘是加法。
那这样它感觉整个效果出来就会更加有层次感。
Zisha clay is mined in Huanglong Mountain near Yixing. It is then refined to achieve a perfect texture and shaped by hand. The potter assembles the body, lid, and spout, ensuring a seamless fit and balanced form. Finally, the teapot is fired in a kiln, enabling the clay's natural colors and textures to come to life.
Now from one key craft here in China to another in France. Paul has more.
Hidden in the far corner of northeastern France, St. Louis crystal has been making spellbinding works of art for almost 500 years. And just as Zhizhaware captures the essence of Chinese craftsmanship, glassmaking wonderfully reflects Europe's artistic heritage. Among St. Louis' most iconic creations are its paperweights.
What are you doing right now?
Alors là, je suis en train de fabriquer des fleurs pour futur presse-papier.
And what are the key skills for this type of work?
C'est vraiment une passion de vouloir réaliser un presse-papier. Il faut être en même temps créateur, designer, artiste d'un côté aussi, pour pouvoir réaliser, fabriquer le presse-papier.
Delange is a Meilleur Ouvrier de France, one of the finest artisans of this craft. Part of the process involves pulling molten crystal to extraordinary lengths.
This is crazy. They're actually stretching the glass, and look how far it goes.
Stretched more than 30 metres, when cool, a rod like this will be cut and combined with others. These combinations are then stretched again to make intricate floral patterns. Known as millefiori, the tiny pieces are later arranged into a mould. Finally, crystal is poured inside this to magnify the beautiful design. One of the factory's most prestigious collections features the Chinese zodiac. Look at this exquisite piece, crafted for 2024 to mark the year of the dragon. Wonderful.
How does it actually feel once you've finished a piece?
Je suis content de moi. C'est au niveau du résultat qu'on se rend compte du bon et beau travail qu'on a réalisé. En équipe, bien sûr.
But it's not just paperweights and their nod to the Orient. St. Louis has been making vases, tableware and chandeliers for centuries. Each piece, a delicate dance between time and artistry.
Le côté artistique est très important dans le métier de verrier. Quand on voit la complexité des pièces, il faut vraiment avoir un sens artistique pour la beauté de la pièce, pour la beauté du geste.
What do you love about this job?
Donc le plus beau dans ce job, c'est vraiment de transmettre le savoir-faire. La cristallerie a au moins plus de 400 ans, donc il faut transmettre les savoir-faire, sinon ça n'a pas de sens.
The work done here is a testament to individual skill and teamwork.
All right, let's leave the heat and head over to the cold workshop. Come on.
What happens on one side of the factory affects the other. That's especially true for the cutting and engraving workshop. Precision is vital, otherwise it's back to the very beginning.
Ça demande beaucoup de rigueur et de concentration et dans tout ça il y a des automatismes qu'on va répéter en fait à chaque fois avec tous les points où il faut être vigilant pour avoir un motif parfait.
Every piece produced at St. Louis is unique. A true expression of a traditional craft that transcends time.
The area around Yixing has shaped the region's tea culture with its lush bamboo forests, tea plantations, and pure spring water.
When all this is combined with a Zisha clay teapot, the result is the perfect tea drinking experience.
第一个呢，就是我们讲茶要泡开。用我们紫砂壶泡的话呢，就是很容易就会把茶泡开，因为它的温度你可以摸一下，温度很高。有点烫手，对吧？我们练茶、学茶都会说是从练烫手开始的。这个壶啊，我们可以理解它是一个会呼吸的器具啊。然后我们平时的时候泡茶呢，把茶投进去以后，如果时间焖得久以后，它不会有闷味。
Zisha teapots go far beyond their practical use. Thanks to Chinese scholars, they have become a symbol of elegance. The transformation from earth to refined art reflects a deep connection with nature, turning the act of tea drinking into a celebration of culture.
像我们紫砂壶的话，其实你看着它由刚刚从窑里面拿出来，它有火气，到最后越用的话，它的光泽、气韵会给你带来愉悦，身心愉悦。它打在手上叫把玩。所以它是一个增加了很多文化的符号，就代表中国人的很多的情怀。像只有是一把紫砂壶，它是能够跟你的主人，或者说我送给你那个朋友，它能够产生情感的一个沟通，它是这个载体。
So there you have it, a close-up of one of the most beautiful artistic traditions of China and France. That's it for this edition of Crossing Cultures. Until the next time, thanks for watching.
The Asian Cultural Heritage Protection Youth Ambassador Program has been held in Dazhu, Chongqing. The preservation and research of Chinese cave temples represented by the Dazhu rock carvings received high praise from domestic and international scholars.
The event was held under the framework of the Second General Assembly of the Alliance for Cultural Heritage in Asia. Over 2 days, more than 100 domestic and international experts and young scholars engaged in in-depth dialogues and exchanges on the preservation, research, and promotion of cave temples.
Our digital preservation work on the Dazu rock carvings began relatively early. Currently, our primary focus has been on conducting specialized 3D technical scans of some of our most important caves. Now, under the framework of the Alliance for Cultural Heritage in Asia, we are already engaged in exchanges across Asia.
To date, 75 cave temple sites within the Dazu rock carvings have been designated as protected cultural heritage units, housing over 50,000 statues. In 1999, the Dazu rock carvings were inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. The preservation and research of Chinese cave temples, represented by the Dazu rock carvings, has received high praise from domestic and international scholars. Focusing on the research, preservation, digitization, management, and revitalization of cave temples, the event gathered a total of 78 academic submissions. The first-hand materials and information presented by the scholars have provided greater breadth and depth to those studying how to best preserve cave temples in Asia. Shen Li, CGTN.
Coming up next, winter flurry. The frozen landscapes of northern China set the perfect stage for an explosion of seasonal tourism from snowboarding and beyond. Mysteries of the ancients. The forces that shaped Sunxingdui culture in southwest China take Oxford University in the UK as their latest stage. It's The Vibe here, so good to have you with us because we have more stories for you. Shanghai is hosting more than 800 masterpieces from the famed Lingnan School. Reporter Zhang Hong visited the exhibition at Shanghai Art Museum that traces how these southern gems transformed Chinese art.
In 1932, Gao Jianfu, one of the founders of the Lingnan School of Painting, created his landmark new national painting masterpiece, Flames of Eastern Battlefield in Shanghai. With this work, he staged a revolution in Chinese painting, breaking the traditional boundaries of subject matter. Using a bold fusion of Chinese and Western techniques and a direct engagement with contemporary reality, Gao condensed his era's social and political reflections into a single canvas. Today, this painting, along with more than 800 other masterpieces of Lingnan art, has returned to Shanghai, the very city where these ideas were first disseminated. Founded in the early 20th century, the Lingnan School sought to reinvigorate traditional Chinese ink painting by incorporating Western artistic techniques, rejecting the long tradition of austere black and white works. Lingnan, which means south of the mountains, in the present day is generally taken to mean the region covering Guangdong, Guangxi, Hong Kong, and Macau. The Lingnan School was so named because its founders, artists Gao Jianfu, Gao Qifeng, and Chen Shuren, all hailed from the province of Guangdong.
那这次的作品的总量呢，是我们当体展览历年来是算是最大规模的，因为有超过800件作品，从20世纪初期到新中国美术，从这个1949年到改革开放。 从改革开放到新时代，到我们当下，可以看到一代一代的艺术家，通过这样的一个画笔，来描绘我们整个时代的变化。按照以前的经验的话呢，就是我们很多观众是来了好几次，就是说，一个礼拜可能来2、3次。
Through the early 20th century, Guangdong and Shanghai artists moved in constant dialogue from Lin Fengmian's studies in Shanghai to the modern art associations that emerged in both cities. This century-long exchange allowed the Lingnan spirit of renewal and Haipai spirit of inclusiveness to nourish each other.
我们通过一些这个 AI 跟科技的赋能，令到这个展览可以把这些静态的这些作品给活起来，甚至可以回到我们当时的这个历史的场合。所以呢，你会看到我们这次呢，科技感的满满的一次展览。
Zhang Hong, SMG International for CGTN, Shanghai.
Northern China has begun its winter tourism season with a range of travel options for snow enthusiasts. In Heilongjiang, over 300 tourists have caught the first specialized ice snow tourism service of the season. The 6-day Arctic tour focuses on slow travel and deep cultural immersion in regional hotspots, local cuisine, and interactive activities. Following fresh snowfall, Zhangjiakou's Chongli district is preparing for a ski tourism boom. Shijiazhuang Airport has increased flights to Zhangjiakou, forming a 1-hour air shuttle network served by multiple airlines. Meanwhile, in Xinjiang, the village of Pingqianliang in Urumqi is also getting ready to welcome winter sports tourists as temperatures drop, rolling out the white carpet for the snow season. The Minjiang Estuary Wetland Nature Reserve is the largest untouched wetland in southeastern China's Fujian province and a key stopover along the East Asian Australasia flyway. As the migration season reaches its peak, nearly 1,000 tundra swans have arrived here over the past few days to begin their wintering stay. This year, these swans not only showed up earlier than usual, but the numbers are also noticeably higher compared with previous years.
I'm standing in the Sentry area of the Minjiang River Estuary Wetland Nature Reserve. It's around 3 p.m., the time of today's high tide, and the perfect time to watch tundra swan up close. Behind me, you can see them spread across the shallow water and mud flats. Their feathers are bright white and their necks long and elegant. Some are dipping their heads to feed, while others rest quietly in pairs. According to the staff, the first tundra swan of the season was spotted here in late October, signaling an early than usual arrival this year. Tundra swans are really quite interesting. They like to travel as families. Adult birds will bring their offspring along when they forage. It creates a very heartwarming scene. To better track wintering bird populations, the reserve increases its frequency of bird service every migratory season. According to the latest monitoring results, this year's tundra swan not only arrived earlier, but their numbers are also higher and growing at a faster pace. This wintering season began with a single pathfinder recorded on October 29th. By early November, a family of 6 swans had arrived, and their numbers have since surged, often rising by dozens or even more than 100 within a week. The latest monitoring shows 980 tundra swans at the reserve, far above the usual 200 seen at this time of year. I'm down on the mud flat with the stuff. It's so muddy and soft here, so we had to switch to rubber boots. Right next to me is the wetland's native vegetation, tall reeds and these little scrufy plants you'd barely notice, but funnily enough, they're the tundra swan's absolute favorite food. And they're called surface maricator. Their starchy roots give the swan the energy they need to make it through the winter.
After we removed 770 acres of Spartina alterniflora, the native plants quickly recovered, especially Scripus mariquata, which spread rapidly and boosted food availability, leading to more tundra swans arriving. We also improved monitoring and water level control in restored ponds to make the habitat more suitable for swans and other wintering geese and ducks, ensuring ample food for them and a safe resting place.
To better safeguard wintering migratory birds, the wetland has continued its ecological restoration efforts, removing invasive species, converting farmland back to wetlands, and restoring native vegetation to create more connected, bird-friendly habitats. The latest monitoring shows that in November alone, nearly 20,000 birds of over 110 species have been recorded here. Zhao Chengxuan, CGTN, Fujian Province.
Still to come. Bronze Age bounty. Wonders of Sanxingdui archaeological site wing their way from Sichuan to historic halls of Oxford University.
A vast land of 1.4 billion people. The world's second largest economy. Home to stories of the unexpected, the unimaginable, the breathtaking. Stories that touch the soul. Feel the speed, the passion. Enjoy spectacular natural and cultural landscapes. Feel the thrill of cutting-edge innovations. Discovering China. Global Biz. China Travel. We present a China never seen before. 24/7 at your fingertips.
Welcome back to the studio. We continue with our program. An exhibition at Oxford University is bringing the treasures of China to a wider audience. The story begins in the 1920s when archaeologists in Sichuan province unearthed a trove of Bronze Age masks and artifacts, the work of a mysterious people who created the Sanxingdui culture thousands of years ago. Jeff Moody reports from Oxford.
Sanxingdui, the most mesmerizing name in Chinese archaeology. The treasures that were uncovered here offer a tantalizing glimpse into a world long ago, long lost, long forgotten. When farmers in rural Sichuan province first uncovered gold beneath their feet back in the 1920s, little was known about the Shu people. So ancient, not even written records could attest to who they were, how they lived, and how they thought. More sacrificial pits were discovered in the 1980s and in 2019.
The discoveries at Sanxingdui have taught us a lot about the Shu people. We know a lot about their belief systems. We know, for instance, that they believed that birds were the embodiment of their ancestors. We know they worshipped the sun. But we've also learned that at the core of their belief system is the art of sacrifice. And we're not talking about human sacrifice.
No human remains were discovered in these sacrificial pits. Could it be they sacrificed masks instead of people? Archaeologists noticed how many of the masks were broken or burned before being put in the pits, suggesting perhaps that they were used as offerings to their gods, a theory being explored while a plethora of questions still remain.
Chinese archaeologists, who are amongst the best in the world, are very painstaking in their researches and so on. So it's going to take a long time. But the correct view is that it's been there a long time, and we have a long time to try and understand it. So yeah, but the future, I think, is particularly exciting at the moment.
Experts believe only 0.2% of the site has been excavated so far. 0.2% of the stories still beneath the earth, waiting to be told.
You can see the connections with the other part of China. So it is a very good demonstration how the world old civilizations, they connect with each other, and they may learn from each other, and they have exchange with each other.
We may never know the whys and the wherefores, but this exhibition helps to ensure the Shu people are forgotten no more. Jeff Moody, CGTN, Oxford.
Nigeria's booming comedy skit industry has quickly grown from short online videos into a multi-million-dollar digital economy. Young creators are turning their content into jobs, brand deals, and influence, making the skit economy one of the fastest-growing areas of the country's entertainment scene. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam takes a closer look.
The other picture is sent for me. Those two pictures. Look at how you.
Across Nigeria, short comedy skits posted on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram are no longer just entertaining millions. They're creating jobs and powering a fast-growing industry. Abuja-based comedian Stanley Milius, known as Gospel Alaji, started making skits back in 2017, long before the industry took off in 2021. His political and social satire character, Honorable Member, now earns him millions of views and a large online following. He says things changed even more in 2024 when his content became fully monetized.
Apart from you making money, you make friends and you make new families that watch after you. So that's what content creation has given me so far. Apart from that other benefit I had in content creation, I'm an ambassador to a real estate in Abuja, my Abuja home. I've been given plots of land, almost 5 plots of land.
The skit business is now part of Nigeria's wider creative industry. Valued at about $31 million, it employs thousands of young people, camera operators, editors, scriptwriters, sound technicians, and digital marketers. Analysts say the low cost of entry is helping more young Nigerians tap into the digital economy.
Many more Nigerians now see the fact that they can put out their personal content, their creativity, their skill, their own knowledge base, and they can earn money from that. It's affecting the economy because many more Nigerians now are tapping into their creative side.
But creators say the sector still faces challenges. Many skit makers lack the technical know-how to properly set up their pages and maximize earnings, something Stanley says cost him years of revenue.
I've worked for more than 5 or 6 years creating content, and it is the platform that is making the money instead of me, because one, I did not have the proper knowledge of setting up my page.
Despite the gaps, experts say the future looks bright. With more creators gaining digital skills and more Nigerians consuming online content, the sector is expected to expand rapidly.
I feel that in the next 1 year, the current figure we have now would triple. Because first of all, expertise, more Nigerians are learning the skill. Understanding, more Nigerians are beginning to watch that space.
Nigeria's skit economy is now part of a broader creative boom that includes Nollywood, Afrobeat, and fashion. Experts say it contributes millions of dollars annually and is helping diversify Nigeria's income away from oil. And as more creators professionalize and global audiences expand, skit making is becoming one of Nigeria's strongest digital exports. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And with that, we wrap up today's edition of The Vibe. But before we go, we leave you with beautiful scenery from across the country. I'm Leonie Zuma from the capital. Thanks for watching. Stay cultured, stay curious, and stay tuned for more news coming up on CGTN.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, everyone. I'm Richard Ntai in Nairobi. Let's begin with our top story. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Kang, says China firmly opposes Japan's latest letter to the United Nations, accusing Tokyo of evading key issues and attempting to shift blame. Here are the details.
China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Song, has delivered another letter to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, rejecting Japan's arguments over Taiwan as unreasonable and reiterating China's position on the Taiwan question. Fu said the direct cause of the current differences between China and Japan is Prime Minister Sana Takaichi's provocative remarks that implied Japan would militarily intervene in the Taiwan question. Fu's letter comes after his Japanese counterpart Kazuki Yamazaki sent a letter to the UN chief, saying Japan's position on issues concerning Taiwan is consistent. The Chinese envoy urged Japan to provide an explanation of its consistent position, citing multiple legally binding documents. Fu said Takaichi's remarks violate the commitments Japan has made. Fu reiterated that Taiwan is Chinese territory, and Takaichi's linkage of Japan's, quote, survival-threatening situation with the Taiwan contingency goes beyond its passive defense strategy. Regarding Yamazaki's insinuation at defense development of other countries, Fu said the international community must remain vigilant against Japan's ambitions to expand its military capabilities and revive militarism. He also said Takaichi's words and deeds have severely undermined mutual trust and damaged the political foundation of China-Japan ties. He urged Japan to demonstrate its sincerity with clear reaffirmation of the One China principle, immediate retraction of the erroneous remarks, and practical steps to honor its commitments to China.
Japanese Prime Minister Sene Takaichi is facing a strong backlash at home and abroad over her erroneous remarks on Taiwan. Political and economic commentator Kogo Shigeaki has called her comments extremely reckless and out of step with mainstream public opinion.
Collective self-defense itself violates the Constitution. This has long been the mainstream view. Among those of us with formal legal training, including constitutional law scholars, about 99% believe it is unconstitutional. On historical issues, Takaichi's views mirror those of right-wing hardliners. No matter the criticism, she refuses to acknowledge any mistakes. It reflects the same reluctance to admit Japan's past wrongdoings and her own.
Kyodo News reports Japan has held informal talks with the Philippines on exporting its Type 03 medium-range surface-to-air missile system as the Takaichi government moves to relax Japan's defense export restrictions. Citing multiple sources, Kyodo says the administration plans to abolish current rules that limit defense exports to 5 non-combat categories, possibly as early as the first half of next year. Once a formal decision is made, concrete talks on the missile export could move forward quickly. Kyodo notes the move signals Tokyo's push to expand arms exports, but the lack of full parliamentary debate has already raised concerns. French President Emmanuel Macron arrives in China this week, beginning a 3-day state visit from December the 3rd to the 5th at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. This marks his 4th trip to China. Beijing says the visit reciprocates President Xi's state visit to France last year and comes as the two countries celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations. At a time of global uncertainty, both sides aim to deepen cooperation in diplomacy, trade, and culture. To explore the goals and expectations of this high-level engagement, CGTN has spoken with the 2 former French prime ministers, a former senior trade official, and a leading scholar. Let's listen in.
This visit is something of a tradition. Every year, the French president wanted to go to China, and the Chinese president also comes regularly to France. They have much to discuss, especially as we look ahead to 2026, when France will chair the G7. That will certainly be one of the key topics. Naturally, the international situation will be central to their talks, particularly the future of multilateralism, which faces challenges today. Both France and China are committed to a multilateral approach, one that promotes peace and balanced global governance. There are also many bilateral issues to address, such as economic and cultural issues. This annual high-level dialogue is essential to advancing our shared projects and bringing our two countries closer together.
If we want to solve the world's main problems, we must have a multilateral approach. None of today's major issues can be solved by a single country. This desire to work together is the fundamental point of convergence between China and France.
We are in a moment of great global upheaval, with the balance of power shifting. China will naturally be a major power in the international system. So, a new balance must be found, which requires statesmen with a long-term vision. I believe your president has such a vision.
The dialogue with China, of course, is indispensable. There will be no solution to the climate crisis without cooperation with China. We are a place where CO2 emissions have been decreasing almost for a decade. And so we hope to be joined by others. And that's where I think the dialogue with China, of course, is indispensable. There will be no solution to the climate crisis without cooperation with China because of the obvious size of its economy and its share of CO2 emissions. And so we count on this capacity to work together towards a zero carbon world economy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been in Paris seeking to bolster European support during talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. Their meeting at the Élysée Palace comes as Kyiv considers the peace plan proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, a plan that many European countries fear could concede just too much to Moscow. Zelensky's visit follows Ukraine's talks with U.S. officials in Florida and precedes a planned meeting between U.S. Representative and the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Ross Cullen has more from Paris.
We've been watching that news conference between Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron, the two men holding that conference after they had one-on-one talks inside the Élysée Palace a little bit earlier on. Let me bring you some of those lines that have come out of that. Emmanuel Macron saying that there will be discussions in the coming days between the United States and members of the Coalition of the Willings. This is a group of some 30 or so Western nations that back Ukraine about security guarantees, potentially the very next day after a ceasefire is agreed. Could we see that reassurance force, that much discussed possible force of French and British troops inside Ukraine agreed? Will the US sign off on a NATO Article 5-style security guarantee for Ukraine? So further discussions in the coming days confirmed by Emmanuel Macron. Also, we heard from Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, thanking President Trump for the work the US administration is doing, thanking the European allies for their steadfast support for Ukraine, but also lamenting the fact that there are ongoing attacks at the moment in what Russia describes as the special military operation, what Ukraine describes as a war. And we know that Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky agreed that there has to be a just and lasting peace. And Volodymyr Zelensky saying that, in his opinion, Russia started this conflict, so Russia should end it.
Peace talks are once again raising hopes for a deal to end the Ukraine conflict. But in Kyiv, many residents say they're not optimistic, pointing to continued attacks and daily uncertainty. Evangelos Ipsis reports from Kyiv.
People seem to be tired of all of these talks and what is going on here in the country of Ukraine. There are talks that are taking place. The people here, of course, are looking to the news to see what is going on. They're following these developments in the US, but also in France. But they're not optimistic that this will lead to something. They're very cautious of how they're thinking about these talks. They feel that no breakthrough would actually happen. Attacks continue to take place here in Ukraine, especially earlier on Monday. There was an attack in the Dnipro region where 4 people lost their lives and several were injured. So all these images of attacks, sirens going off, people rushing to the shelters, is not really sitting well with regular people, especially here in the capital of Kyiv, who say that, while these talks are taking place, I still have to cover myself and I still have to cover for my family because I don't know when the next attack will happen. It has become a pattern for them.
Floods and landslides across South and Southeast Asia have killed more than 1,200 people. Sri Lanka has suffered its heaviest damage since the 2004 tsunami, with entire communities buried by landslides. The death toll has risen to 410, with 336 others still missing. Troops and helicopters are reaching areas still cut off. And in Indonesia, areas of Sumatra remain underwater after rare back-to-back storms. Warships and hospital ships are delivering aid to villages where roads have collapsed. Southern Thailand is enduring one of its deadliest flood events in a decade. Its disaster response has prompted public criticism and the suspension of 2 local officials. Malaysia continues large-scale evacuations as swollen rivers inundate northern states. The World Health Organization has deployed rapid response teams and medical supplies. The UN agency warns that climate change is intensifying extreme weather across the region. Werbalin Purba reports from Indonesia.
Behind me, you'll see this road that's cut off by landslides with visible debris like mud and rocks. Authorities are still using heavy machinery to clear the debris. It's Monday afternoon right now, and they told me that they've been working on this since this morning.
This is the main road in Aidan Koting that connects many areas in North Tapanuli in North Sumatra, now completely cut off. It also leads to the port city of Sibolga, one of the hardest hit areas, damaged by landslides and flash floods as a result of heavy rain in recent days. Flash floods began almost a week ago. Monsoon rains damaged homes, roads, and knocked down power lines.
We don't know what to do. Please help us repair our home just so we have somewhere to sleep at night.
This resident currently sleeps at a neighbor's house as her home is filled with mud and debris.
My child is in Sibolga. We don't know if she is doing okay.
Residents here have no way of contacting family. There's been no power and no phone reception in the area for the past 6 days.
Home appliances, clothes, my bed. We can't use any of it. Everything went underwater.
This person works as a truck driver and is forced to stay at the nearest shelter with his toddler. Residents say food, water, medicine, and clothing are desperately needed in the region. Indonesian relief officials say warships loaded with aid have been sent from Jakarta. At least 600 people have died in Indonesia so far, and many are still missing. Werbalin Purba, CGTN, Aidan Koting, North Sumatra.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I will be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. West African regional bloc delegates visit Guinea-Bissau and call for restoration of constitutional order. Sudan's paramilitary RSF says it has made gains in the crucial Kordofan region amid continuing influx of refugees into neighboring Chad. And the UN HIV/AIDS agency warns that international funding cuts have thrown response programs into turmoil. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Ntah, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's begin with our top story. And we start in West Africa, where the regional bloc ECOWAS has called on Guinea-Bissau's military leadership to restore constitutional order and allow the release of election results. Representatives from the bloc, which last week suspended Guinea-Bissau's membership following a coup, have been meeting with the new government. CGTN's Caroline B. reports.
A high-level delegation from ECOWAS, led by Sierra Leone's president, Julius Maada Bio, traveled to the capital Bissau, seeking a return to civilian rule following a military coup last Wednesday. In a meeting with the transitional military government, the leaders urged the release of election results from the disputed November 23rd presidential elections.
As we see, we've had today very fruitful discussions. Both sides have expressed their different concerns. On the part of ECOWAS, the chair of the authority condemned the coup and calls for the immediate restoration of constitutional order, which includes allowing the electoral process to a logical conclusion.
While the meeting did not offer any breakthrough, the ECOWAS delegation said it will decide the next steps, including possible sanctions, at a summit on the 14th of December. João Bernardo Vieira, Guinea-Bissau's foreign minister, appointed by the military, said they will continue talks with the regional bloc.
A solution is for us to continue working together with ECOWAS. A one-year deadline was set, but obviously this will be submitted to the Conference of Heads of State and Government on December 14th, and based on that decision, we will know what to do and how to proceed.
According to the government, the ECOWAS delegation also held talks with the Electoral Commission with the aim of obtaining information about the electoral process. After the coup, the military suspended release of the results, in which both President Umaro Sissoco Embalo and opposition candidate Fernando Diaz da Costa claimed victory. President Embalo initially fled to Senegal, but has now sought refuge in the Republic of Congo, according to Congolese government sources. Interim President Major General Hota Intar, who will lead for a one-year transitional period, has already appointed a new cabinet, largely composed of allies of the ousted president. Caroline B., CGTN.
Nigeria has offered protection to Guinea-Bissau opposition presidential candidate Fernando Diaz da Costa at its embassy in Bissau. Nigeria's foreign ministry said the decision stems from a commitment to regional peace, stability, and democratic governance. The 47-year-old Diaz da Costa, a relative political newcomer, was backed by an opposition coalition that has denounced the takeover. The coalition alleges that it was an attempt by President Umaro Sissoco Embalo and his supporters to block the proclamation of election results that would have confirmed his defeat. The UN also condemned the coup, while the African Union has suspended Guinea-Bissau from the continental body. Now to the conflict in Sudan, where reports say many refugees are having to rely on fellow refugees for food and other essential supplies. Thousands who fled the fighting into neighboring Chad say they have found limited amounts of aid and is taking the charity of fellow survivors to ease their suffering. Humanitarians say resources are few, and the recent violence in El Fasher, for instance, has deepened the crisis. CGTN's David Mbithi has that report.
Only a week has passed since Ibrahim Ishaq and his young family fled Sudan into neighboring Chad. Before reaching this transit camp, about 6 kilometers away from the border, they had sheltered at the Abu Shuk displacement camp just north of El Fasher. They escaped a day before RSF fighters swept in, but lost at least 4 relatives who were shot and killed in the mayhem.
There were a lot of problems in El Fasher, and it's sad because there were daily shelling, killing and displacement. There was also hunger. Many people were eating animal feed.
Ishak and his family have joined more than 1,400 refugees awaiting transfer to other camps farther inland, but they're finding little international humanitarian aid available to them in the meantime.
There is no treatment, no medications, nothing except for the pail and the things they give us. We came out of El Fasher with our clothes only, without money, without shoes, without blankets. We don't have anything.
On most days, it takes the generosity of locals to care for the refugees, who include orphan children from El Fasher. Volunteers have taken to buying and preparing food for the recently displaced, using money donated by other refugees living in the border town of Tine.
We are living off the charity from people in Chad as well as people from Sudan.
The UN's refugee agency says it barely has 40% of the $246 million it estimates is needed to respond to the Sudanese refugee crisis in Chad. Last month, the UN's most senior aid chief met with survivors of atrocities carried out in El Fasher as he traveled across Darfur and called Sudan the epicenter of global suffering.
She said to me, is there more help coming? And will we be safe? And at the human level, I want to say yes. And so, of course I say yes. I want to give her reassurance that help will come. But I know it might not. And I've got to keep making that appeal, keep urging the world to respond with more generosity and solidarity to people who want the same things as we all do and have just lived through unimaginable horror.
Normally, a transit camp like the one in Tine would hold refugees only briefly, with regular relocations to safer camps farther inland. But limited funding to provide sufficient water, clean sanitation and shelter at those inland camps has slowed relocation efforts. David Mbidi, CGTN.
The Rapid Support Forces say it has taken control of the Bana Nusa in Sudan's West Kordofan region and captured the Army's headquarters there. A social media video released on Monday showed armed men in RSF uniforms firing their guns and cheering outside a gate in the said location. Reuters news agency was able to confirm the location of the video using satellite imagery, but could not confirm the exact date. Baba Nusa is a key transport junction in the country's oil-producing south and was the last army stronghold in West Kordofan state. It comes as the RSF is shifting its focus eastward after consolidating its grip over Darfur with the capture of El Fasher in late October. Meanwhile, efforts to stop the conflict between the army and the RSF have faced repeated setbacks. The most recent one, tabled by the U.S., was rejected by the Army chief, who claimed it was biased in favor of their enemy. Some believe only a regional effort can make the decisive breakthrough. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
The U.S. strategy in Sudan has been wide-ranging, from direct diplomacy and shadow talks to targeted sanctions. Most notably, Washington has been leading a mediation strategy referred to as the Quad, alongside Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. Recently, a proposal was put forward by US-led mediators calling for a 3-month humanitarian truce that was to be followed by a 9-month political process.
We have appealed and we have asked repeatedly the two parties to accept this humanitarian truce as presented without any preconditions.
However, Sudan's military chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, rejected the proposal, stating it was the worst one so far, another blow to efforts to stop a devastating conflict that has gripped the African country for over 2 years now.
They didn't look at our response, and they didn't consider what we say to them. The proposal is the worst one presented. This proposal eliminates the armed forces, dissolves security agencies, and keeps the militia where they are. It is very bad, and we do not accept it. And I believe if the mediation continues in this direction, we will consider it to be biased mediation.
Human rights advocates say there is an urgent need for a regional consensus to stop the fighting in Sudan.
So if US fail to secure a consensus within the members of the Arab League on the agenda of peace and stability in Sudan, U.S. will never have any advantage. Whatever U.S. is doing, they need to make sure there's a consensus within the Gulf states for peace and stability in Sudan.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury and State Department have also used targeted sanctions on individuals, entities, and companies linked to both the Sudanese army and the RSF. UAE-based companies accused of facilitating gold sales and arms to the RSF have also been sanctioned. According to the UN, at least 40,000 people have been killed since the conflict broke out in April 2023, with over 14 million forced to flee their homes. But despite repeated diplomatic attempts and targeted financial pressure, the conflict has only worsened, pushing the country further toward a worsening crisis. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN.
Senegal has marked the 81st anniversary of the massacre of African soldiers who had fought for France during World War II. The riflemen were killed in Thiaroye by French troops after complaining over not being paid for their services. It's an event whose full truth and aftermath continue to be debated. The West African country has long demanded its former colonizer take responsibility and properly investigate the massacre. President Bashir Diomaye Faye says the search for truth is to not only strengthen recognition of the soldiers, but to also educate younger generations about this significant part of the nation's history.
The fight to preserve the memory of Thiaroye is a fight for the soul of Senegal and for the soul of Africa. It is a fight to ensure that never again will our people be denied their history, their dignity, and their very right to exist freely. That is why the government of Senegal is committed to strengthening the place of the history of the Thiaroye massacre in our school curricula. Our children must learn about the events, the people involved, and the stories. They must understand the mechanisms of colonial domination and the value of resistance.
Nos enfants doivent en connaître les séquences, les acteurs et les récits.
The commemoration was marked by a colorful military parade at the Thiaroye military base. It brought together several African delegations, historians, and descendants of the riflemen.
When descendants of the riflemen were recognized at the ceremony, we were proud. We must recognize the efforts, the blood and sweat shed by our ancestors to liberate us from France, so that it does not remain in vain. We therefore demand this duty to remember.
The massacre remains one that has long been overshadowed by misinformation, with the Senegalese government working to uncover the full truth. The French corps comprised soldiers from former French colonies in Africa, such as Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, and what are now Mali and Burkina Faso. According to the French military, between 35 to 75 soldiers were killed. However, Senegalese historians dispute this claim and believe it's much more closer to 400. And while Paris says it shared all relevant documents with Senegal in 2014, the historians suspect that other key documents remain a secret. It was not until last November that France officially recognized the 1994 massacre for the first time through President Macron. Excavations have been underway since May this year at the Thiaroye military camp to verify the official death toll. Last December, President Faye announced the construction of a memorial in honor of the riflemen and other initiatives such as the creation of a research center where archives on the massacre will be kept. Sophia Shimichero, CGTN.
Time now for a short break. We shall reset and return with more Africa Live. Here's what's ahead. Coming up, the UN's HIV/AIDS agency warns that international funding cuts have thrown response programs into turmoil. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Health officials in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have declared the end to what was the country's 16th Ebola outbreak. The outbreak, announced in the southern province of Kasai in September, claimed 45 lives in total. Efforts continue to ensure the disease doesn't return. CGTN's Crystal Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
A ceremony was held in Kinshasa to mark the end of the DRC's latest Ebola outbreak. The infectious disease has been declared over after 42 days elapsed since the last patient was discharged. The outbreak was first reported in the Bulape and Mweka health zones in Kasai province on September 4th. The province has poor roads and telecommunication facilities, which made it difficult for health workers to reach and treat patients. But a coordinated response by the Health Ministry and international partners like the World Health Organization has succeeded in ending the outbreak.
After taking into account all the scientific indicators which prove that the chain of transmission has been cut, I officially declare the end of the 16th Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Samples tested at the country's national laboratory in the capital Kinshasa confirmed the latest Ebola outbreak was caused by the Zaire strain. Scientists say Ebola is transmitted from infected animals like fruit bats and spreads rapidly through direct contact with infected people. Its symptoms include headache, fever, vomiting, and diarrhea. The DRC recorded one of its worst Ebola outbreaks in the country's east in 2018. More than 2,000 people were killed in that outbreak. The country now has thousands of doses of vaccines to protect against Ebola, which is endemic in provinces with dense forests. The latest outbreak was the 16th to occur since the disease was first discovered in 1976. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yesterday was World AIDS Day, and a fresh report suggests that Africa can overcome crippling funding cuts through resilience, investment, and innovation. The report compiled by UNAIDS says the cuts, which expanded significantly this year, have led to massive disruptions to HIV prevention and community-led services, endangering the lives of millions of vulnerable people. CGTN's Wilkerson Yabwa reports.
According to the UNAIDS World AIDS Day Report 2025, this year the global response to HIV suffered its most significant setback in decades. In early 2025, the United States, the largest donor to the global HIV response, temporarily halted the majority of its HIV-related foreign aid programs. This hit vulnerable groups hard as they could not access special care services they were receiving from donor-funded programs. Community-led organizations which had previously been able to reach the most vulnerable people reported widespread closures. In 2024, UNAIDS reports showed that globally there were 570 new HIV infections every day among young women and girls aged 15 to 24. Sub-Saharan Africa bears the highest HIV burden globally, and the World Health Organization reports that it is home to almost 65% of all people living with HIV. Now the report warns that a failure to reach the 2030 global HIV targets of the Global AIDS Strategy could result in an additional 3.3 million new global HIV infections between 2025 and 2030. Several countries have taken action as they try to fill in the gaps left by the recent funding cuts. Nigeria, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa and Tanzania have committed to increasing their own funding for HIV-related health services. Organizations including the Gates Foundation, UNITAID, the Global Fund and the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief have launched initiatives to ensure widespread access to affordable generic formulations of life-saving medicines, and experts say innovations such as the twice-yearly injections to prevent HIV have the potential to prevent tens of thousands of new infections. But the gains are still slow. Today, an estimated 40.8 million people are living with HIV worldwide, while 1.3 million new HIV infections occurred in 2024, and 9.2 million people are still not accessing treatment. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
And now more on those twice yearly injections we just heard about that are reported to be highly effective in preventing HIV transmission. The drug being used is called lenacapavir, and it's received its first public rollout in Africa yesterday in 3 southern countries, South Africa, Eswatini, and Zambia. In Eswatini, dozens lined up to get the jab at a lively event organized by the health ministry.
We've been always living in hope that someday, somehow, treatment is going to be available and the cure is at the corner.
We are here today at Ewubini, where as a program within the Ministry of Health, we are launching the lenacapavir, which is a 6-month injectable. It is an injection that will be used by both females and males. It is also can be taken by our youth. We are hoping to reduce our new infections. We must remember that from our SHIMS-3, as a country, we are currently experiencing about 4,000 new infections per year.
Uganda says it has made progress in reducing HIV infections. However, data shows the East Africa country could miss its 2030 target of ending AIDS as a public health threat, especially as more girls and young women continue to get the HIV virus at far higher rates than boys their age. CGTN's Michael Baleke reports.
You're most welcome.
Josephine Nabukenya knows this journey all too well. Born with HIV, she only learned her status at the age of 8. Now she spends her evenings talking to other young people, breaking stigma, reminding them to stay on treatment.
At the time of adolescence, HIV is just this part on your body. You have other things coming up, your hips are growing, your boobs are growing, and then HIV is also in your head, your medication is in your head, you get. Like, there is no adolescent who will think of HIV first, they'll think of their own self because of the stage that they are in. So, I mean, that is why suppression among young people has been very, very challenging.
According to the latest Uganda AIDS Commission HIV/AIDS fact sheet, national prevalence stands at 4.9%, down from 5.1% in 2023. But behind the decline is a worrying trend. Adolescents, especially girls, are driving new infections. Nearly 70% of young people affected are between 15 and 25, and girls account for the vast majority.
Multiple concurrent sexual partnerships, inconsistent, incorrect, or non-use of condoms, transactional sex are some of the risk factors. The other risk factor is income inequality. But again, those categories, because of vulnerability related to income, they are forced to look for ways of survival, and that pushes the individual into transactional sex, and therefore highly exposes them.
Officials say this trend needs urgent intervention, especially for young women already at higher risk. Uganda wants zero HIV infections by 2030, but officials admit they may not get there unless more support reaches the girls and young women most at risk. And that story isn't unique to this country. It's playing out across the region. Across East and Southern Africa, the world's most affected region, the pattern is the same.
Adolescent girls and young women remain disproportionately impacted. They are about 3 times more likely to acquire HIV than their male peers. And in no way does it mean that young girls have, more frequent sexual interactions than boys. That is not how this should be interpreted. We should interpret this in terms of their biological vulnerability, in terms of the likelihood of young girls facing sexual and gender-based violence, and also in terms of intergenerational sex.
Globally, more than 210,000 girls aged 15 to 24 acquired HIV last year, most of them in Eastern and Southern Africa. UNAIDS says prevention must expand access to PrEP, a daily pill that helps HIV-negative people avoid infection, boost condom use, sexual health education, and offer more community testing. It also urged investments in girls' economic opportunities, efforts to end gender-based violence, and ensuring young people are involved in shaping policies that affect them. Back at the campfire, Josephine hopes her story helps people take control of their future and pushes Uganda closer to its 2030 goal.
Michael Balike, CGTN, Kampala.
Discussions about how to adapt lessons from China's modernization took center stage during a promotional forum held in Nairobi for the English translation of the 5th volume of the Chinese president's book, Xi Jinping, The Governance of China. Organizers said guests, including diplomats, local leaders, and students, assembled in the Kenyan capital to learn more about China's governance and development through the content of the book. The volume contains 91 of President Xi's works under 18 topics. It includes reports, speeches, talks, addresses, articles, and instructions. It further documents how the Communist Party of China, with Xi Jinping at its core, has led the country towards building a modern socialist country amid complex global challenges. Officials say the publication of the 5th volume is geared towards helping the international community gain a deeper understanding of China's achievements and development direction while promoting mutual learning on governance. The event was jointly hosted by the State Council Information Office of China, the China International Communications Group, and the Chinese Embassy in Kenya.
Kenya is also advancing a bottom-up economic transformation to strengthen an economy that benefits ordinary citizens and lift millions out of poverty. This approach aligns closely with President Xi Jinping's people-centered vision. We stand ready to work with Kenya and all countries to use this book as a bridge for deeper exchange of ideas, exploring paths of shared development, advancing women cooperation, and jointly building a community with a shared future for mankind.
The success of China offers a concrete hope. It shows that with persistence, well-coordinated strategies, developing countries can drastically reduce poverty, even those with large populations and historical structural disadvantages. Through international cooperation, for example, investment, technology transfer, as I said, infrastructure, capacity building.
Kenya has completed a major black rhino conservation effort. The World Wildlife Fund says black rhinos remain critically endangered because of demand for their horns on the illegal international market. The 2-week operation at the Sava West National Park aimed to improve monitoring and data accuracy of the species. It involved methods such as ear notching and tagging. CGTN Sophia Shimachero reports.
Wildlife teams in Kenya have been carrying out one of the most intensive identification operations for black rhinos. The exercise involved ear notching and tagging at Sava West's Ngulia Sanctuary over the course of 15 days. It's a process that begins with locating and safely sedating each rhino. Then specialists notch both ears using a specific pattern of small cuts. More than 75% of the eastern black rhino are now individually identifiable through ear notching. In addition to the notches, roller ear tags and digital transmitters are deployed. This creates a detailed record of the rhino, which also helps avoid inbreeding.
You produce a certain pattern on the right and left ear, so that when you see that individual and using the coding that is used in the rhino conservation, you can tell that is rhino so-and-so. So it's rhino Philip, and you put them together with Janet, who is not their sister, so when you move animals to establish new populations, as has happened many times in Kenya, you want to move individuals that are not so closely related like sisters.
The exercise is part of a wider national strategy to boost the numbers of black rhinos. Kenya's black rhino population was around 20,000 in the 1960s, according to African Wildlife Foundation. But by early 1990s, the number had dropped to around 400 due to widespread poaching. Presently, the population stands at least 1,000 on account of sustained conservation efforts.
We've got to see rhinos as ecosystem engineers that keep the ecosystem healthy, not just for themselves, but for us humans and for other wildlife. So put rhinos in that perspective. It's our heritage, so we don't want to lose it.
With this, the Ngulia Rhino Sanctuary is undergoing major expansion to accommodate the growing population.
When you have more rhinos in a restricted space, is that the rate of increase of the population goes down, which you could say is equivalent to poaching
because you are losing certain individuals who would be there if the sanctuary was larger or the animals were in a larger place. The constraint can come through social, because the groups exclude each other, they fight, and so you may even have deaths if the animals are so restricted together.
Conservationists hope that this initiative will improve the long-term survival of the endangered species. Sophia Shimichero, CGTN.
Welcome into our business segment. Samsung has launched its first triple folding phone, a special edition product with a price tag to match. The super thin device unfolds to a 10-inch display and measures 3.9 millimeters at the thinnest point. The Galaxy Z Trifold will go on sale on December the 12th, and at over a price tag of $2,400, it's more than double the price of the new iPhone 17. Samsung says it's not intended for mass sales. The triple fold function is not the world's first. China's Huawei beat Samsung to the punch last year with a phone at a similar price. Growth has been patchy in the competitive smartphone market, pushing makers to find new, eye-catching ways to differentiate their products. Samsung's launch comes as recent industry numbers suggest Apple is on track to overtake Samsung for the first time in 14 years as the world's top smartphone maker through 2029. Apple has also long been rumored to be planning a foldable iPhone, possibly as early as next year. Now, Africa is pushing towards faster, cheaper, and more connected trade. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, or PAPS, now allows businesses across the African continental free trade area to settle payments in their own local currencies. Experts say it's cutting out costly delays in dollar conversions. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more from Abuja.
Barbara Amodu launched her luxury wig business in 2020 with most of her customers in Ghana, Senegal, and South Africa. But receiving payments often took days, slowing down deliveries and affecting turnover sales. Now she uses Remitano, a fintech platform that settles cross-border transfers almost instantly. With quicker confirmations, she ships faster and expands her African customer base.
Everything is now ASAP. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I can send to my supplier. My clients can also send money to me just ASAP. It's no longer taking time like before.
Fintechs are stepping into this space in full force. Brand Drive, founded by Ndu Ekwamadu, provides SMEs with end-to-end digital payment tools. In just 2 months, the platform has processed more than 2,000 cross-border payments within the AFCFTA area, reducing transaction times from days to near real time.
We're looking at 5 to almost 10-15% of this transactional fees cupped down to always somewhere around 0.5 to a maximum of about 1.5 to 2%. What that does is it puts more, because the difference between that 5% and maybe a 2% is literally profit for that business.
High transfer charges still cost Africa an estimated $5 billion every year, and the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, or PAPS, aims to close that gap. Under the system, buyers pay in their home currency while sellers receive payments in theirs, creating a seamless continent-wide trading environment.
Now, the advantage of this is if you try to implement trade by going to dollar and then back to dollar and convert back to dollar, you lose about 20% of the money. There's 10% on your side and 10% on the other end, and then it takes long. Now, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System removes the need to have dollar, for example, or other reserve currencies coming into play.
More Africans are now using mobile money apps, remittance platforms, and crypto gateways to move funds across borders. But growth comes with new risks: cyber fraud, inconsistent policies, and fragmented regulations threatening the momentum of digital trade. Fintechs like Brand Drive are now building AI-based security tools to prevent fraud, yet experts say harmonized rules remain essential. As adoption rises, African governments are racing to update their digital payment laws. Coordinate oversight, along with reliable infrastructure, is what analysts say will determine how far systems like PAPS can scale across the continent. PAPS has expanded to 19 countries, with more than 22 Nigerian banks already on board. For traders like Barbara, quicker payments mean faster deliveries, higher profits, and a bigger continental customer base. For AFCFTA, it's a crucial step towards an integrated African market, one where digital payments could become the new backbone of intra-Africa trade. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
In South Africa, energy security is a constant problem for businesses and farms across the country. This is largely due to a long-running electricity crisis characterized by insufficient generation capacity and an aging grid. Some farmers say they've decided to manage the problem themselves through sustainable and energy-independent solutions. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports.
Agrivoltaics involves using land for both agriculture and energy generation, and it is gaining popularity in the country's agricultural sector. This approach not only provides farmers with energy independence, but also boosts their revenue by generating solar energy on their farms. Farmers can sell this energy through power purchase agreements, while also enhancing land efficiency by installing solar panels.
It's coming about that there's going to be a great liberalization of the electricity sector, where solar farmers on one farm can then supply farms adjacent or down the road. At the moment, it's very difficult to get that right because you have to wheel through ESCOM. So I'd say going forward, you can expect a lot more demand coming from the agricultural sector, both on agrivoltaics, but then also on the wheeling and plugging into the trading pool.
By installing agrivoltaic systems, farmers can sell energy to neighboring farms during the off-peak harvest season. This not only supports their financial operations, but also powers packhouses, machinery, and irrigation equipment. Agrivoltaic systems have many applications within the agricultural sector, including being elevated above both crops and livestock, as well as being integrated with greenhouses. Umbani Energy Investments is among the earliest adopters of agrivoltaics and has several farms where installation is planned. Through an initial pilot program, they successfully grew fruits and vegetables while also generating energy for sale. They now plan to invest further in agrivoltaics.
So we started with the agrivoltaic pilot in the rurals of Limpopo, where we saw quite a few benefits, but also some of the challenges. So we plan now to take the learnings from that use case and to scale it up to a small-scale CNI project where we'll have an overhead agrivoltaic structure that's powering a farm that will be producing strawberries.
New legislation will establish a framework that allows the agricultural sector to fully harness the benefits of agrivoltaics, paving the way for a more sustainable future. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, welcome into sport on Africa Live with me, Richard and Todd. Let's talk a bit of football, shall we? FIFA has announced the procedure for the World Cup draw, which will take place in Washington on Friday. In a departure from previous draws, the world's top 4 teams, Spain, Argentina, France, and England, will effectively be seeded for the tournament. It means they will avoid each other until the semifinal stage, should they win their respective groups. All but 6 of the finalists have now been confirmed, with 4 from Europe and 2 more from the Intercontinental Playoffs to advance next year. Now, those 4 teams will be in Pot 1 for the draw, and they'll be joined by 8 others. They include the 3 co-hosts, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., as well as Brazil, Portugal, Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. Africa will have 9 teams in the draw, but could even squeeze a 10th into the tournament through the intercontinental playoffs. 2 African sides will be in Pot 2. Morocco, who famously finished 3rd in the last World Cup in Qatar, is one of them. The North African country, ranked number 11 in the world, will host the 2025 AFCON later this month, and they'll be joined by Senegal, who are currently ranked number 19. The Lions of Teranga are in their 3rd straight tournament. Now on to Pot 3, and this has 5 African teams. Egypt are making their return to the World Cup after missing out on Qatar in 2022. Algeria will be making their 5th appearance, and Tunisia are also in it, the 4th country from